Okay, we go Center Ipsen online, we now have a quorum.
I just want, before I start, I want to. Well, hold on, I don't know.
Our policy here says that only.
You don't want to
Supposed to let us
Yeah, don't
as
do
soon
it.
as possible, but not like.
Just
No,
we're
just wait,
we're waiting on.
We're just waiting on some technical issues. Thanks everyone for joining us today. It'll just be a couple more minutes. So thank you for your patience.
Chad's testing it over there, right? Nine.
I just did it well. Jason called it last.
It looks like he's testing it. Chad, are we good?
Not yet. Oh, you have to.
No, good.
One of us do.
Are you testing it? Test. You good? Is it working? Is it working? It's working. Okay, great. All right, we'll give them a minute to get it to them. Do you know how many people we have online? Okay. Fantastic. Okay. All right. It looks like we are now all ready to go. So, welcome to the redistricting committee meeting. We appreciate the public's participation. It looks like we have about 150 people online right now. So, thank you for taking time out of your busy workday to come spend some time with us up here at the Capitol and participate in this process. So, first, if I can get approval of the minutes from the September 22nd meeting. And while I'm waiting for that, I just would like to note that Senator Ibsen, we do have online joining us virtually. So thank you, Senator. So can I get an approval of the minutes from Monday? Thank you. Representative Brooks has made the motion that we approve those minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Those minutes are approved. So we continue the process today, and I just want to make sure we set the table here and walk through some things before we jump into the review of maps. As my co-chair, Senator Sandel, stated on Monday's meeting, we are here using a redistricting process, standards and requirements that were not chosen by the legislature, and we're here pursuant to a court order. And while we might disagree with that court order, we do fully intend to appeal it to the Utah Supreme Court, and if necessary, the U.S. Supreme Court at that appropriate time. We did ask for an emergency stay, but that was denied, but that was not the full case. So we had some questions after our last committee meeting, and we just wanted to make sure that was abundantly clear. We also plan to keep the 2021 map in code, only adding a new map through this court-ordered process, while the court has blocked the 2021 map. If the appeals are successful in unblocking that map, it will become the applicable map again. So again, just some process details we thought would be helpful as this is new for all of us. But just first wanted to point out that one of the reasons that we are so strongly disagreeing with the court's order is first and foremost the Utah Constitution in Article 9, Section 1 states specifically that the legislature shall divide the state into congressional, legislative, and other districts accordingly, and it is the constitutional responsibility of the legislature to have that ability to do so. Additionally, another reason why we strongly disagree is when we redistricted in 2021 under the SB 200 process, which was the agreed upon compromise, we held 19 meetings. There are several of us on this committee who were on that committee then, and we held those committee meetings all over the state to be able to hear from citizens and gather feedback about redistricting. And so under the court's process and timeline that has been created, we now only have time to roughly allow 10 days of public comment. We are going above and beyond by having public comment today in committee and having it on Monday. That was not part of the court order, but we wanted to make sure we followed our legislative process. But there will be 10 days after today that you're able to submit comment online. And so if you aren't familiar with that, on our website, you can find the maps that we'll be discussing today. And you can go in and submit comments to different areas of the map or at large over the map. And so after that public comment period, we must pick and pass one of those proposed maps as per the court order. And we also cannot pass a map that was not made public before the start of that 10-day period. So while we can and will consider the public's input on which proposed map to choose, we cannot use the public's feedback to make the changes or adjustments we might otherwise make in a legislative process, but as per the court order, we're unable to do that. One other challenge that we have encountered with the process the court has ordered is that we've been hearing a lot of feedback from people saying, why aren't you calling the Independent Redistricting Commission back in? Why aren't you taking their maps? We actually specifically asked the court to stay the implementation of her order, to give the legislature enough time to convene an independent commission and to go through that process pursuant to Prop 4, but the court denied that request. as did the Utah Supreme Court when we appealed it. So we hear you on the Independent Redistricting Commission that is required by Prop 4, but we are stuck with the process and timeline that the court has ordered, also running up against a backstop in preparation for the 2026 elections. So that process and timeline simply does not allow for us to follow the independent commission process under Prop 4, and we wanted to make sure that was clear. After all that being said, while we may not be happy with the process that we're being compelled to follow, we are doing and have done everything in our power to comply with the court's order and Prop 4, given the extreme time constraints we've been given and the unfortunate circumstances we've been put in. But we have done our absolute very best to be in compliance with Prop 4, as you will see today in the maps that we review. So one other thing that we need to point out, and again, it was hit on Monday, but for those of you who are new joining us today, we are required to avoid partisan data and information, and we are doing our very best to comply with the court's order on that. And one thing that's very important for committee members and just for the public to be aware of is that we can absolutely not use things like election results, voting records, party affiliation information, or consideration of incumbents or prospective candidates as we go through the process of considering the maps before us. We will be referring to all districts as CD 1 through 4, and this complies with Prop 4 and helps us comply with the prohibition in Prop 4 of favoring or disfavoring any candidate or party. So we appreciate the committee members and members of the public who attended Monday's meetings and kept their comments in compliance with Prop 4 criteria. And we would expect and appreciate that same consideration and effort from everyone today as we discuss the maps that we'll be reviewing. So again, to members of the public, thank you for being here. We value and want your input on the proposed maps, which is why there are multiple options for you to consider. But to the extent that you feel inclined to share feedback that relates to partisanship, please know that we cannot consider it, and we will be instructing our committee members not to consider it. We've also asked staff to filter out partisan information so that we as committee members do not receive that and don't want to jeopardize being out of compliance with Prop 4. I know we've said this over and over and over again to our staff, but we just want to reiterate that again, under Prop 4, we're strictly prohibited from considering partisan data. So hopefully I have beat the dead horse, but it is very clear there that we are not going to be considering partisan data. So today, while we are going to be discussing maps, we will not be taking a final vote on the selection of one particular map. We'll continue to hear public comment and feedback on that though. And so you're able to see those online, and you also will see them today. We'll have them pulled up on the screens that will be in front of you. So that's important to understand. All maps that were public yesterday at the time of the agenda going live and additional maps that may be presented today by committee members, again, will be available for public comment. And then on the morning of October 6th, the committee will come back after reviewing public comments and vote on what map to recommend to the legislature, and then we will have a special session later that day. So hopefully that's given you a good idea of where we're going with this process and why we're doing it the way we're doing it. It is to be in compliance with this court order and what we're trying to do moving forward. So a couple other questions we got after our Monday committee meeting, and we are reading your emails, we are reading your texts, so thank you. A lot of people kept asking, why aren't we just implementing one of the IRC maps, one of the Independent Redistricting Commission maps? We've had people suggest that, but we want to emphasize that we legally cannot adopt one of those maps. The court's order, Judge Gibson's order, specifically says that those maps from the IRC were recommended by the Independent Redistricting Commission, established under SB 200, which was the compromise bill, and its work was performed under SB 200 and not Proposition 4. Thereby, their maps are not allowable in this setting. So while we can and have considered those proposed maps to help in this process, the fact is they did not follow the Prop 4 process, and we've analyzed them and also found out that they do not comply with a substantive amount of Prop 4 criteria. So the fact is, given the court's order and the requirements of Prop 4, the legislature cannot adopt one of the IRC maps. So wanted to clear that up as well. We'll be sure to answer any emails of individuals who weren't here to hear that explanation. Again, just wanted to make sure. We're good. Wanted to make sure that we set that table, answered those questions. Again, appreciate our committee members. We are a citizen legislature, and there's been a lot of time that has gone into this that's outside of the normal work that we usually have during interim. So appreciate their comments today. We are going to have staff pull up the maps and the PowerPoint. We may need to toggle back and forth. We're going to be pulling up maps A through E that we discussed on Monday. But we're going to need to toggle back between the map software and the PowerPoint software. So if you can just be patient with us, we're going to walk through this with you. Committee members, as we go through each map, feel free to share your feedback and comments on that. This is our opportunity to take a deep dive on them and also walk through the splits of municipalities, counties, and how these maps comply with Prop 4 standards. So, we ready? Go ahead. Okay, so again, we hit Prop 4 standards home on Monday. We went through the requirements in place. And even with those Prop 4 standards, there are hundreds of maps that could be generated that meet Prop 4 standards. And so, as part of that, as a legislature, we have had conversations around what is important when we're looking at communities of interest and how do you help inform the decision of which map you're going to select. So you've got the Uinta Basin, you have tribal lands and reservations that we wanted to make sure remained intact as a community of interest. We also wanted to ensure that our campuses and institutions of higher education were not split right down the middle in preserving that as an obvious community of interest. And then also our military installations in preserving those as community of interest. Also, when you are looking at what congressional representation would be working in partnership on, these are important things that have a nexus to the federal government. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just add, we recognize that there are thousands of definitions around community of interest. We recognize that. We considered how many of those that we may or may not incorporate into what we wanted to consider. And those were the 4 that we felt rose to a more objective standard, and that we could then use those 4 to try to help in developing a map and, quite honestly, picking a map.
Great. So to just lay those out again, as we've been reviewing maps, we're going to be ensuring that the tribal lands and reservations as listed here on this screen are kept intact and preserved as a community of interest. You can see specifically the institutions of higher education that we would want to make sure that a campus would be preserved as a community of interest. So that includes our universities, our colleges, and our technical trade schools. So those are all listed here as well as a community of interest in our state. And then obviously specifically our military installations. Utah has a phenomenal presence from our military, and specifically we have some incredible national security assets in our state, like the Utah Test and Training Range, which does cross the boundary between Box Elder and Tooele counties. So we're flagging that if there is something that we're aware of with Prop 4. You obviously have Hill Air Force Base, Camp Williams specifically also crosses 2 boundaries. You have Tooele Army Depot, and then Dugway Proving Ground. So those are all military installations we consider to keep intact as community of interest moving forward. Okay, so we're going to jump into our maps here. Again, we have A through E, and you can see here on the left side of this column the Prop 4 requirements that we, again, are required to keep to under Proposition 4. Every map we're going to show you today is in compliance with Prop 4 standards. So you can see here, there's also different shapes that you'll see given our state's unique population center along the Wasatch Front. And as was explained by Dr. Trendy on Monday, the size of Salt Lake County specifically exceeds the size of a congressional district, and so it has to be split at least once. So this map will have equal population. What that means is we've driven the population down to 0. So in terms of there's no difference between CD1 and CD3 in the number of people that live there and are in it. We have worked to minimize municipal splits. This one should have, thank you. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so we've got, and so we're going to do this because this was one of the questions we had on Monday. So the 3 municipal splits are North Salt Lake, Pleasant Grove, West Valley. The 3 counties that are split is Davis, Salt Lake, and Utah, obviously our most populous counties. Okay, so you can see those specifically that we have significantly reduced city and county splits. They also meet the standard of compactness, the contiguity and ease of transportation. Interestingly, a computer can generate a map, and some of the maps that were looked at, it would take 18 to 23 hours to drive a district because the map did not know the major geographic features and transportation corridors that, say, a member of the legislature or public might know. We've worked to preserve those traditional neighborhoods, and as we have defined communities of interest, we have worked to follow natural and geographic boundaries, and we have worked to maximize the boundary agreement as described in Prop 4. So this is option A, and I just want to make sure, is there anyone on the committee who wanted to give any comments on option A? Okay, Representative Brooks? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Senator McKell.
I've been looking at all of these maps, and one thing that jumps out to me on option A, when you look at the criteria in Prop 4, following natural and geographic boundaries, barriers, features, we don't have a way to cross Lake Powell yet. So one of the things that I've been looking at is actually that just the criteria and compactness and that transportation flow, and I do actually like that break with Lake Powell because there's not a way to cross that, and it'd be almost impossible to represent all of those communities at the same time. So that was something I appreciated in option A.
Great, thank you. Any additional comments on option A? All right, then we will move forward and do a review of option B. So will you go back to option A real quick? This is like the eye doctor where they say A or B. So you can now look at option A one more time before we go to option B. Okay, so we're going to go to option B. You can see the shape file here in the districts and how it's a little bit different. But again, this one we drove the population down to 0. Let's look at those splits. So the 3 municipal splits that we have on option B are North Salt Lake, Provo, and West Jordan. So that's obviously going to be across those population centers. And the 3 counties that are split again are Davis, Salt Lake, Utah. Each of those counties are only split once, correct? Okay. All right, go ahead and, oh, or is it twice? Okay, I just want to make sure that we've accounted for that. Okay, go ahead and go back then. You can see in terms of ease of transportation, similar to the comment made by Senator McKell, it is mindful of that. And also the natural and geographic boundaries. I think this one specifically, and Senator Sandel, when he'd like to, can talk about the Colorado River or the Green River if needed. And then obviously it meets those other requirements under Prop 4. So this is option B when you look at the maps moving forward. Okay, any comments on option B? We've got a few. Senator Fillmore?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say that I think in each of these 3 maps, A, B, and C, which look a lot similar, Utah County is technically split twice, but only because Draper spans the county. And so in order to keep Draper whole, there's that tiny northern part of Utah County up by Suncrest is in one district. In this case, I think it's District 2, I guess, probably, right? That green one, where the remainder of Utah County is in another way. And even though that's the same district, it is 2 splits, right? They're the north part, but it's just to keep the city whole, which is a higher priority. That out.
And we have 4 cities in our state that actually cross county boundaries. So Draper, Bluffdale, Santa Quinn, and Park City. And so when we had our expert come in, generally they don't count that split against you if it's because you're keeping a municipality intact. So I appreciate you pointing that out. That's important. Representative Gracious or Brooks? Representative Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually really in favor of both A and B because they meet both of the things I'm looking for. I live in St. George, which was one of the fastest growing cities and counties in the nation for a time. And I represent downtown St. George all the way up to the little teeny towns of Pine Valley and Enterprise and Gunlock. And it's really brought a great perspective of the different components of being I'm going to call St. George rural a little bit, but also that urban center that they have and the other areas. But one of the pieces that I really like about these two maps is bordering the Colorado River and Lake Powell, not just because you can't get across it, but that is one of the most significant water resources we have in our state. And we have committee after committee and natural resources talk about this almost every single committee meeting, and be able to have two Congress individuals that represent that water source is critical to the entire state of Utah. And I think oftentimes people forget that off the Wasatch Front, there's other basins besides the Great Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to have someone that understands the Great Salt Lake and also all the rest of the state where honestly most of your water is stored and where your power is produced and where you go recreate. So all that land that's being controlled by the federal government is, I think, critically important to have multiple people to be able to represent that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Brooks. I appreciate that comment, and that you and Senator Ibsen are representing Southern Utah. So thank you. Okay, any other comments on our? Oh yeah, Representative Owens. Sorry, your light went off. Yes. Go ahead, Representative Owens.
Thank you, Chair Perucci.
Hold on, your mic's not on. It's a touchy board here. Go ahead.
I guess as a question, the terms of Prop 4, the subsection 5 requires us to assess whether we are punishing any particular party, and we're going through these other criteria in Prop 4. I wonder if we're going to have a discussion of that issue as we go through the maps.
I mean, you're welcome to comment on that, but we aren't allowed to consider partisan data, and so that's not even one of the things that we're discussing.
Well, we're mandated to assess whether it doesn't, in the language of Prop 4, mandate us to assess whether we're punishing a party. I think it does.
I think Senator Sandel would like to answer.
Yes, I think this is a great distinction, Representative. Prop 4 does not allow us to take into consideration any partisan data in preparing a map. It only allows us to compare and create some evaluation after a map has been developed. So the maps you're seeing right now have had no partisan input or influence to them. Once they're arrived at, then they can be scored depending on which partisan test you want to apply. But what we're talking about right now is a map that complies with the 7 options of Prop 4. What you described is not part of Prop 4, according to the judge.
So we can have, and again, as we've had a robust discussion on Monday, that you can apply a test, right, to assess partisan symmetry, and all of these maps have passed that test. But that wasn't applied until after the map was created. But if you have comments on the map, we'd love to hear it.
I'll reserve them till the end, I guess, if I have any on all the maps.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have some additional questions and comments. Senator Escamilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to follow the statement by co-chair Sandel. So to draw the I'm going to be very clear because this is technical, to end up with a map, because they don't draw them physically, right? It's computers and just a lot of,
Now, you can draw a map.
Yeah, sure.
It's allowed.
Yeah, correct. But there were, according to the expert that presented these maps, they were drawn through computer. There was a computer that spit it out of 6,000 maps. We got to this 5 maps.
That's correct.
Okay.
Some of them, I will point out, some of them come from Harvard map recommendations. But
yeah,
go ahead.
So that 6,000 are from the Harper Alarm Project. 6,000 maps.
Not completely.
Not all of them?
They're a combination between of these maps, whether they came from the Harvard program or from Dr. Trendy.
Got it.
And
Thanks.
but each of those computer simulations, we ask to be identified with full compliance to to the seven things that you see on the left hand side.
So follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
to the co-chair, if it's okay. So the 7 standards were met in that are Prop 4 standards and requirements. Those are 2 separate things in the statute language. So I guess to be clear on what the statement was made, and I want to ask the chair and also our staff, our legal staff, because in subsection 5, and I think the Representative Owens read that part, and you were correct, but my understanding was the same for the first part of the statement by the co-chair Sandel, saying when you are creating these maps, you don't use any partisan data to meet the 7 standards that are described in Prop 4, but you have to then come to these other measures to be utilized, which are tests I'm using the word tests because it could be multiple tests to meet criteria 5. Is that your understanding of what you were trying to say, co-chair? And if not, then can legal counsel confirm that, please?
So number 5 is preserve traditional neighborhoods and communities of interest.
I'm talking about subsection 5.
Oh, okay.
My understanding is at the end you apply that to meet partisan symmetry, right? To make sure that you would be applying a test, but that's after the fact that it would be applied. And these maps have all gone through a partisan symmetry test and meet that as well.
A partisan symmetry, correct? Yeah. So so is this the answer? I just want to make sure because I was directing the question to Chair Sandel. Okay, I want to make sure.
No political data can be used, and so I think to answer Representative Owens' question again, can you determine if a particular map hurts or helps a particular political party? We cannot identify that and was not identified in drawing the map. The map did not include any partisan data, did not show anything that was partisan. We were excluded from that on purpose, but after the maps were developed, we asked that the test be run that is the test that we have considered, and again, it's one test that we have considered. We asked that be run to determine if it fulfilled the requirement that Representative Owens asked.
Really quick though, we did have the quantile comparison and the partisan symmetry test. So there were actually 2 tests applied by Dr. Trendy. It wasn't just one. And all those tests are public for you to see online. They're posted on the meeting materials. So I feel like I'm getting into calculus, which I did not grade in, but quantile comparison and the partisan symmetry test that we talked about on Monday were applied. Senator Fillmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said what I was going to say, but with one addition, it's the results of those tests are posted in the meeting materials, but they're posted only as a range, right? Just like
Correct.
This falls within the acceptable bell curve. We're not giving the actual partisan political data that arrived at that because those are things that we can't consider. So
Correct.
The test was done. I'm sure somebody knows what that partisan data is, but we don't because we haven't seen it. But for the public's information, all of that is public. And it's on the committee webpage for today's meeting, where they'll be able to see each of these 5 maps fell within the standard deviation range of both of those tests. And actually, there are, as far as I can tell, 5 different versions of a combination of those tests to consider different factors and show that, what if you account for this variable or that variable, and all of those are listed on the website and show that they fall within the acceptable bell curve range. But as you read in the footnotes, it does so without giving us any of that partisan political data. So anyway, to keep us from violating the law by considering that data, we just don't have it.
That is correct. Does that help, Senator Escamilla? Did you still want our attorney to comment? Okay. Mike Curtis. You need to pull down your microphone there.
Hi, Senators, Representatives. Mike Curtis with Ledge Research. So, Yeah, it's section 20A19-103, which was enacted by Prop 4. It does list 7 subsections that give the criteria that you see on the screen in front of you. Separately, there's a prohibition against purposefully or unduly favoring or disfavoring any incumbent, elected official candidate, or prospective candidate for elective office or any political party. So you have criteria for how you prepare a map, and then just a blanket prohibition on favoring or disfavoring anybody. The legislature and the commission, the Independent Redistricting Commission, are required to use judicial standards and the best available data and scientific and statistical methods, including measures of partisan symmetry, to assess whether whether any map complies with the redistricting criteria, as well as the partisan prohibition, the favoring or disfavoring. And then there's the prohibition against looking at it. But yeah, so I think the process that's been described is you generate a map without any sort of political partisan data in it, and then you separately analyze whether it has passed whatever test you're applying. And in this case, the evaluations that you can see in the meeting materials, Dr. Trendy gives you a result for bias at 50%, which is the partisan bias test, and whether the outcome is symmetric. And then he lists 6 different quantile analyses, and whether you're inside that bell curve that Senator Fillmore described.
Thank you. All right. Additional comments on option B, Senator? Nope. Okay. All right. I think we'll move on to options.
Wait a minute.
Sorry, Senator Ibsen. I'm so sorry. Senator Ibsen, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with what Representative Brooks talked about. You got the Colorado and the Green River that are kind of natural splits, but I think A and B do a really good job of that, and they also do a good job of making those 2 rural districts available so that the constituency has access to their congressperson, and the congressperson has access to a constituency. The travel is made much more favorable on those 2, and so I like both of those because of that.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Moving to option C as a map. Again, similar shapes, but this one is a little bit different here. So we want to hit through again. Hopefully now everyone's gotten used to. You go through the requirements of Prop 4. This one is a little bit different. When you look at it, there are 3 municipal splits. You have Mill Creek, North Salt Lake, and Pleasant Grove. And then there are 3 counties split again. Obviously, our most populous counties, Davis, Salt Lake, and Utah. And so any comments from the committee on map C? Again, this met all the other requirements of the Prop 4 standards. Okay, Representative Gracious.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to comment on this one, going through and really looking at where our various military installations are. I like how the representation ends up with those, and I also really like how the rural representation ends up. You know, I represent a House district that also has a huge rural component to it, and that's something that's really important to me, and I think this one strikes a good line there.
Thank you. I was going to comment as well. If you look at the legislative preferences or other communities of interest that we've identified, you've got Dugway in CD2, Camp Williams, and then you've got Hill Air Force Base in CD1. The different VA clinics, we're going to be in different districts as well. And then also for me, looking at this is the drivability. I think what's important is that voters can reach their congressperson. And it's done in such a way that we're looking at those transportation corridors that I think is really helpful to make sure they get to see their congressperson more than twice a year. So any other comments on option C? Senator McKell?
Yeah. Hey, I just want to comment on this map. I actually like this map more than B. I think when I look at preserving some of those traditional neighborhoods, community of interest, I think it did a better job in Utah County, especially South Utah County. I represent South Utah County. The other part, and I think it's consistent in these maps, when you look at that break between 3 and 4, that's kind of the Wasatch Mountain Range, and that is a natural break across the state. So I grew up in Emery County, and I've gone back and forth through Highway 6 and through Carbon County and Emery County, but you'll see that is kind of a natural break with the Manti LaSalle range, and then again you got the natural break again with Lake Powell. But for me, as somebody who represents this large portions of South Utah County, I really like how option C keeps it all together in a way that I think is very helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you. Additional comments on this map?
This one works
ahead.
really well for the
Senator
rural
Epson, go
component.
ahead.
Works really well for the rural component as well.
Great. That's fantastic. I would just also add, I think I've referenced, I worked for a congressional office at one point, and when you're working on casework and getting constituents, there are unique needs to rural Utah that I think it's beneficial that you have multiple members of Congress that are working on when you talk about VA access to clinics or to federal funding for schools or for federal land. So I do think this map does a really good job balancing that. Senator Fillmore?
I noticed that we aren't zoomed in here with this file, but on each
Would you like us to zoom
no,
in?
it's fine. On each of these 3 maps, we find the same little carve out of North Salt Lake, right? And that, I think, is because when you take Box Elder, Cache, Rich, Weber, and Davis County, you get just a little bit more than the size of a congressional district, right? We need to take a little bit of people out of there. And I think that the carve out right there in North Salt Lake, it's done along census blocks. So when you zoom way in, it looks like a little tiny finger in the whole district.
Joe, can you zoom in on that? I think it'd be helpful for us to see those census blocks.
I just think that I think makes the most sense to carve out that tiny piece of North Salt Lake that borders Salt Lake City and include it in the same district with Salt Lake City is probably the best thing that we can do to balance those, just to drive that population deviation down, but still keep, kind of that community together. Even though technically North Salt Lake's in Davis County, there's got to be a split somewhere. I think that makes makes a lot of sense. And the fact that it's kind of a little bit oddly shaped right there is just a function of census blocks to try to find the right number of people.
Yeah. And I was just going to have us drill down on that so the public can see that. Also, we've had people ask on the jagged lines. Those are municipal boundary lines. City boundary lines are not perfect lines. So we'll pull that up, though, so that we can actually zoom in and see that. Northern boundary is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
between
the boundary
CD1.
between at the Salt Lake County border.
Okay.
Again, give us just a minute. We have to toggle
Yeah, I understand.
between the Esri program, the Autobound program, and the meeting materials.
Yeah.
So you're referring to right here.
Yeah, like it's just like so I mean, it looks a little bit weird there, but those are just census blocks, I mean, it looks weirder when it's blown up.
Can I,
Yeah, go
it may
ahead.
be interesting if we now have them layer the municipal boundaries on here, the city boundaries.
Okay, correct. But you're right, North Salt Lake is split on this one.
And again, this is the effort that we have to go to try to find.
Yeah.
So that's the municipal boundary laid on top right now.
So you can see the jagged edges of any municipal boundary tends to be jagged.
Yeah, they all annex things over
They're-
to
Yeah.
grab this piece.
They're
grab
built
this
for
piece.
another time.
They're jagged.
Okay, but this is the piece that you're showing right
Yeah.
here. Okay, thank you. And is there since we have it pulled up, is there anywhere else, Joe, if you want to scroll back and see where those 4 different districts are? Okay, so let's go to this upper Salt Lake City area. People have asked what that fan is up top. That's a census block, correct? Right here?
Where?
Right here.
Yes.
Sorry, I need like a pointer here.
The
That's a census block.
that
So
runs-
we didn't
runs out
choose
the
to make
Great-
that weird
That runs out to the Great Salt Lake.
triangle. Yeah. So that's helpful. And I think then as you scroll down, you can see how much we've tried, and you can do this with any of these maps to see the municipal boundaries intact. Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Okay, anything else someone wants to see on this map while we have it pulled up? Okay, fantastic. We will go to the next maps. Map D.
Again, this is going to take a minute because we got to toggle between this program and the committee meeting. There we go.
All right, so
Good job.
then you have option D here, which does look a little bit different with CD1 wrapping down and around, but you've got the equal population met. We're trying again to minimize municipal splits. Let's go to those cities that are split. So this map, option D, splits Eagle Mountain, which you can see that there with CD3 and CD2. You can see Layton is split as well, and Taylorsville in that nexus between CD3 and CD4. And then this map, though, does split more than the 3 counties that we've seen on ABC. This splits Davis, Salt Lake, Utah, Tooele, and Wasatch. But it is a different type of shape that we wanted to make sure when we're looking at the different options available, this is one of those options. Comments on this map. Representative Gracious?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a comment on the map, but more a question for the attorney, if that's all right.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Not an attorney. So, Mike Curtis, I'm looking at you, or Mr. Vaughn. As part of this lawsuit, I know minimizing splits obviously is the #1 criteria. So, from a legal standard, is it better for us to adopt a map with as few splits as possible? My question is, should this one be off the table for us from a legally defensible position based on the fact that it splits more than the other 3?
I think you the requirement is not to get to the absolute bare minimum on one standard at the expense of the fall of the rest of the standards. So and I think Judge Gibson's order even recognizes that there is some give and take when you evaluate all the 7 subsections together. So I think I would say that as a rule, it shouldn't be the very bare minimum is the best map. But as you start to see more and more splits or more deviations from what the ideal is in these standards, then yeah, that is a great way to think of it.
Okay, and now my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that at least on population, if we could have adopted a map with a lower population deviation, but we adopt one with a higher deviation, that opens us up. And maybe it's, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
our goal is always to be at 0 if we can.
Co-Chair Sandel.
Yeah. So when we redistricted in 2021, it was very clear that the U.S. Supreme Court has allowed a 0.05, I think, percent deviation between districts, but they've also said that if someone can produce a map that has fewer deviation in it, that it would be okay to challenge the map in court. So to take away any possibility of an additional lawsuit towards the legislature, I think it's probably on our #1 thing on our list is to drive the population to 0, simply to protect us from any lawsuit that may be able to occur because we didn't drive the differential to 0.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, so I think you don't on all of these criteria, you kind of have to take them as a whole. They're prioritized. So a municipal split is going to be more important than a county split, and that's going to be more important than ease of transportation. But yeah, if you see those split numbers go up, there ought to be a really good reason for it to go up. And if there isn't a good reason, like if you're out of whack on the other criteria as well, suggest that maybe you could find a better map.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments on option D, Senator Fillmore.
Thanks. There's a few comments. I think that the split of Tooele County probably makes sense. I mean, a county split is bad, but putting Tooele, the city proper, in with Salt Lake County, I think that's a pretty justifiable argument. Even though it kind of carves it out from the remainder of Tooele County, but I think there is a difference between Tooele City, which has kind of developed. I don't want to offend anybody in Tooele if this is does that, but into an exurb of Salt Lake City, right? A lot of people from Tooele commute to Salt Lake City, so I think that can make some sense. But this is not my favorite map because District 1 just looks unwieldy. We talked on Monday about the courts have found that the eye test is a good test, right? But as you look at the analysis of these maps online, this one is the least compact district of any of the districts in any of the 5 maps because it's so, it's such an odd shape. And so to either draw a circle around it or inside of it is going to leave a lot of other space. So I think that this map, compared to the others, does not do as well on county splits, does not do as well on compactness, does not do as well on ease of transportation. So from that standpoint, I think this is probably my least preferred map, just because I think it does the least. It just has more outliers compared to Prop 4 as the other maps that we've seen, and so that's my opinion.
Thank you, Senator. I would agree on CD1 specifically, and even if you look at CD2, but I think for a congressperson to represent from Logan down to Monticello, and then making sure these Utahns have access to their congressperson, I just think this is a really massive, unwieldy district, CD1. So appreciate your comments on that. Representative Gracious, are you? Nope. Okay. Oh, Representative Roberts. All right, here you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, you've kind of already made my point, but if you looked at the drive times on option D, District 1, from the middle of Cache Valley down to San Juan in Blanding or Bluff area, it's like 8.5 hours. And I don't think there's a drive time that's that long in any of the other maps. And so for that reason, I think this one is towards the back of my list as well.
Great, thank you. This is helpful. Okay, then next up we have, unless there's any other comments, again, we'll go to option E. So you've got option E in front of you, which again, you can see different shapes within those districts. We're preserving, again, driving that population down to 0. I know we keep hitting that home, but for the public, that's very important. And then let's go to those municipal splits. So the 2 cities that are split is Cottonwood Heights and Provo. And then this does have 4 counties split: Salt Lake, Summit, Utah, and Wasatch. So unlike the others, Davis wasn't split in this one. Okay, if you want to go back, any comments on map E by the committee? I think that in comparing this with the other maps, CD2 is much more compact. CD4, and then you have CD3, which again is like the bottom half of Utah, and it's not respecting the geographical features we've highlighted in earlier maps. And then also the transportation corridors. I think there are some serious challenges with CD3 that where, again, a computer generating it wouldn't know that, but as a Utahn you would. Senator Escamilla. Oh, sorry, Representative Owens.
Thank you, Chair Perucci. I was indicating earlier I have some concerns about all the maps, and I think this is probably as good a time as any to let you know what they are. I appreciate Chair Sandel very well articulated how we're supposed to do this, that we draw the maps without regard to partisanship, then we assess with tests whether we've complied with that. Is there an unfavorable treatment of one party? And so as you apply that, we've listened to an expert, Professor Trendy, who said, I'm going to grade those tests pursuant to the partisan symmetry test. And he's got one variant of that. And essentially, we just put our maps into his black box and he says pass, fail. Or he gives it a score of 0 is a pass and of 1 is a problem, 2 is a bigger problem. So it's like a black box. But there's stuff that happens in that
to clarify, we walked through though what that test is. So it's not a black box. You can go through and see the past 3 election data and do the math there. It's not like he's just picking and choosing. There's actually a science to what he's doing.
There is indeed, and I appreciate that clarification. And so we wanted to understand fully what that calculus was, and he described it to some extent, but you'll recall, I think he mentioned a couple of data sets. He said the Harvard data set of 6,000, and that's publicly available, and we have an expert who's looked at that as well. He also mentioned other ones. He called it a cold set, and we've asked for that and not been able to get it. That is part of his test, okay? And we've wanted to get that. We have not been given that data. It was promised this morning. We still don't have it. Now, we want to understand fully and have an expert be able to understand fully how he's doing that. He's applying a partisan bias test as the key part of his political symmetry, which is mentioned in Prop 4. The problem, we've identified some issues with that. The professor who invented that test, the partisan bias test, has said, Gary King, that it shouldn't be applied in a lopsided political state like Utah. And there's reasons for that. And we saw when our good committee counsel, Mike Curtis, put up a chart on Monday, and it showed this hypothetical where each party is reduced by 11 if you're in the majority and increased by 11 points if you're in the minority. And if that hits 50, that's a good district. But then when you step back and look, okay, there's hypothetical information at one level, and then we look back at the reality of the information, all those 4 districts in that chart clearly would not be winnable by one party. So in other words, his black box or his formulation of assessing partisan impact allows a hypothetically, realistically very unwinnable districts by one party to pass as though they were winnable. And so we objected to that analysis. We wanted to really peek under the hood of how he was doing that. And we've frankly been denied that opportunity. We were told this morning we would get the data, still don't have it. The very test at issue has been critiqued by the Supreme Court in a case in 2006, League of United Latin American Citizens versus Perry. Justice Kennedy critiqued it. He called it, he said,
For a point of order, we're not discussing the symmetry test or anything on the back end. We're discussing Prop 4 criteria. So if you will hold to Prop 4 criteria, which are the 7 pieces here in your discussion, I would ask the chair to allow that. But to drive down this discussion that we had on Monday again about which tests are good or which tests are bad, I don't think that's applicable to the discussion around the maps.
if I may respond to the.
Yeah, and I would just say we are showing how they comply with Prop 4 requirements, and we've also shown that he also did a quantile comparison. I think what I would ask is then what's the test you'd like to see? And you said something earlier about competitive districts, which we have tried very, very hard. We have not looked at any partisan data in this process. And so is your goal to create a district that's winnable by another party?
My goal is to try to understand what I think is going on here, which is a supposedly impartial test has been devised, which is punitive to one party. Okay. Now I understand the Chair Sandals' comment that we'd want to talk about the 7 criteria in Prop 4. Prop 4 also says you must assess whether there is a partisan impact, unduly favoring or disfavoring. And what we've been trying to say is the test that's been devised is unduly favoring one party. And I'll give you, we submitted, Senator Escamilla and I, as our file number 9901, we submitted the enacted map, which is a textbook example of a gerrymander, and it passed his test.
That's an opinion, right?
Well,
So like
the
there's
textbook
no
example is okay, yeah.
No, what you
But-
just said there. I'm just saying we aren't talking about the 2020 map at all. In fact, we're not allowed to pull that in on this map.
But we submitted it for him to analyze,
Correct.
and he passed it. He said that's partisanly symmetrical. Okay, I don't think that's partisanly symmetrical.
But that's your opinion.
Well, we want an expert to analyze the data. We've asked for the data. We have an expert sitting here who can comment to it. We'd like to be able to present his.
Well, we haven't got
testimony.
to we're not So
appreciate
we're
that.
working on legislative process here. You don't just randomly bring someone up to the dais. But what you can do is
Yes.
when you have a bill file,
Yes.
you can have someone co-present. So when the time is appropriate, which will be in
Yes.
just a moment, for
Yes.
you to present the bill that you and Senator Escamilla have created, you can bring up your expert there.
Okay.
I guess I am concerned, regardless of what party you're in, if the goal in Prop 4 is an outcome, not process, then that's not Prop 4. I will tell you, I was not an expert on Prop 4 before being a part of this process. And I can't say I'm an expert now, but I know a hell of a lot more now. And it's about process. And so when we keep talking about outcomes, both parties can go back and forth on outcomes, but there's a process that we have diligently followed. And I think we have to respect that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I just will leave it at this. What we are saying is there is a process in place which does not fairly assess whether we are punishing a party. And that's simply the point I'm trying to make on these maps. And I'll be quiet now and wait for an expert opportunity.
But is there anything else about these maps under Prop 4 specifically that you want to share?
No.
Okay. All right. Senator McKell.
Thank you. I'm going to hold my comments. You can turn off my light. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. Any other additional comments as we look through A through E? Okay, seeing none, we are going to go to, as part of this map consideration, Representative Owens and Senator Escamilla had gotten us a map. I believe staff had it loaded yesterday as soon as they could. We left the schedule open enough to give some ability to hear a map, although it wasn't submitted within the 24-hour window, but hopefully those in the room can see online the map that I believe Senator Escamilla is going to be presenting. And if you do have any co-presenters, if you can just make sure they state their name and who they represent, that would be fantastic. And then, yeah, if we need to bring up an extra chair, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good morning. Oh, hello. There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Co-Chair. Thank you for the time. Representative Owens and I will be presenting our map, and it's, I think, labeled Escamilla Owens map.
Would you like us to pull the map up?
Yes, please,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Joe,
if
if you can pull that up, that'd be great. Thank you.
And we do have an expert with us who will be who assisted us getting us to this map. Representative Owens and I have spent the last couple of weeks, like all of you, learning and working on maps, probably more than we were want to. And we take our role in this committee very seriously. We feel it is our responsibility to fully understand what is required of us, and we appreciate the time to be able to explain our proposed map. We believe it's imperative to have access to the data sets used by the legislature's hire expert, Dr. Trendy. And just to be clear, staff has contacted me this morning. That data set is now available and will be also made public to the entire public in the website. So I do want to, because I've been asking for this for days. So thank you to the staff that got us this information this morning, this set of information. Ultimately, we consulted and hired our own independent expert, Dr. Daniel Magleby, and he'll introduce himself in a minute. And he helped us present a map. He will help us present a map that meets Prop 4 redistricting standards and requirements, now known as 20-28-19-103 in our statute. And with that, Madam Chair, can I pass the time to Representative Owens?
Yeah, go ahead. And you'll just need to share the mic. I'm sorry, we just have two. If you want to even slide in the middle. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Magleby, would you please introduce yourself?
Good morning. I think we're still good morning. No, we're good afternoon. My name is Daniel Magleby. I am a native of Provo, Utah. And to this crowd, when I review my academic credentials, it's important to note that I went to Rock Canyon Elementary School, Fair Middle School, Timpview High School, before going on to BYU, where I earned a bachelor's degree in political science. Following my time at BYU, I received a master's degree in mathematical methods in the social sciences from Northwestern University. I then went on and earned a PhD and a master's degree at the University of Michigan in political science. I'm currently a professor at SUNY Binghamton in upstate New York, where I spend my time researching redistricting, gerrymandering, and methods for evaluating maps for all sorts of bias.
And is your position at Binghamton tenured?
I am a tenured professor at Binghamton.
Have you offered testimony in other states on redistricting maps?
Representative Owens, this isn't a courtroom, so it's okay. We'll ask questions, but we don't go through and establish this isn't normal. So
well, you're right, and I appreciate that. I was trying to follow the format that the chairs used with the expert yesterday or on Monday, but
I think we allowed Dr. Trendy to introduce himself, and then committee members can ask questions if that's okay. But go ahead and continue with your presentation. So,
well, let me ask him to look at the map and describe it to you. And
that'd be great. Thank you.
try to step back, Chair, but just to help its structure move quicker, I think it might help.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, Madam Chair, I have served as an expert in litigation and redistricting in New York and in North Carolina. The representative and senator asked me to help them develop a map that they could share with you all today. This map started as a proposal made by the IRC. We've made significant changes to bring it in line with Proposition 4. The map itself only divides Salt Lake County into 2 districts. It was developed by a nonpartisan, independent process and then adjusted to meet the standards laid forth in Utah law. When we evaluate the map, we find that it is consistent with what we would expect a neutral process to yield, which is the standard that is we use to evaluate in litigation around the country. I don't know that I have much more to say about the map now. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have.
May I just prompt a few things? I think
I think we've got a lot of committee questions that we'll ask about it. But if you want to walk through, to be fair to you, similar to how we just did on our other maps, Can you walk through municipality splits? Can we just say cities? Can you walk through city splits, county splits, the Prop 4 data that we just did on those maps? I think a lot of the questions will be about that to start. And Representative Owens, whatever you want to add to that. Yeah.
Yes, I think if you run through the chair's questions and explain what political assessments you made about whether it was punishing any party.
Absolutely. So the map itself is an adjustment on a map that was proposed by the Independent Redistricting Commission. Excuse me. It does exhibit mild population deviation from exactly balanced. This could be remedied with small additional adjustments. It splits 4 counties, Davis, Morgan, Salt Lake, and Utah counties, and it splits 13 municipalities. The map is, it exhibits symmetry under the regular process, under scientific standards of contextualizing symmetry within what we would expect from a neutral redistricting process. In addition, when we look at the Harvard simulations as presented here, and when I've done my own analysis using the Harvard simulations, it falls well within the accepted range of what we would expect from a neutral redistricting process.
And could I'd just like to ask, what are the most important tests you would apply to understand that partisan impact, and did you do that?
So the standard practice for evaluating any map in scientific and thorough ways to compare it to what we call an ensemble analysis. So when we list the Harvard data here, and it sounds as though Dr. Trendy has also conducted his own independent ensemble analysis using different maps that he's developed using separate criteria than the Harvard group did. We take those ensembles and we compare the map, the characteristics of the map to those ensembles, and we see whether or not the map deviates in significant ways from those neutrally drawn, computer-generated maps. In the case of this map, it does not deviate in meaningful ways from, it doesn't deviate it falls well within the range, is how I should say this. It falls well within the range of what we would expect from a neutral redistricting process as represented in the Harvard data. I should clarify that I have not had an opportunity to review Dr. Trendy's simulations of Utah. When I was retained on Sunday evening to help Senator Escamilla and Representative Owens, I immediately said we need to request access to Dr. Trendy's data. Those requests were made again when I arrived in Utah late Monday and again yesterday, and I believe they were supposed to be delivered this morning. I still haven't had access to them, so I'm not prepared to speak to Dr. Trendy's ensembles, but there are several questions I have about how he's applied that methodology and what's missing from the analysis he's conducted or at least reported here.
Can I ask though, how many cities are split in this map?
I think I said that there are 13 municipalities.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, so 13 splits, and you said 4 counties, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
okay.
right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So if I just want to add, he's about done. I just have a couple of clarifying questions. So
Hang on.
Dr. Trent?
If you're going to present, Representative Owens, why don't you present what you want to present? We typically in a committee meeting don't ask questions of those that we come up. We would clarify something. I'm just saying this on Monday you moved into the line of a deposition as well, and I'm not sure that that's what this committee needs to hear or do. We have questions. You have questions that are leading your witness to say something, but we have questions as well. And I'm just concerned that now you're trying to lead your expert witness where you want him to go. And quite honestly, the committee has questions.
Well, I appreciate that, Chair. I was actually just trying to follow the format. I thought we were following Monday with the other expert, so I apologize. I would like the doctor to explain one last thing to you, and that is Dr. Trendy's analysis somehow a mathematically pure thing, or does it involve judgments? And could you explain how that works?
And again, can I call point of order? Simply because Dr. Trenny's map is not in question on your map. And the presentation is about your map.
If I could respond,
this would be appropriate from a committee perspective. When we go to discussion at the end, I think that's helpful if you want to bring out beyond. But generally, if we're treating this like a bill presentation, the comments should be germane to this map. So if you would like to talk about the test you administered to create this map, that would be appropriate.
Well, I think it's a bit of an artificial construct. We are trying to say our map is superior in the way it assessed impacts on a political party, and that there's defects in the way the other maps were assessed.
And I think you saying that works way better than asking the question. So go ahead.
Well, I think it matters to hear why that's true from an expert's perspective. I can't do the math.
Yeah, and if you'd like to add to that, go ahead.
Representative, I want to be clear that I didn't conduct any tests on the map ex ante, and that's actually gets to the heart of some of my concerns of the ways that Dr. Trendy has developed the tests that he reported on one page.
Explain what ex ante means.
I'm sorry, ahead of time. I didn't conduct any tests on this ahead of time. I took a map that already existed. I adjusted it to bring it into line with Prop 4 while also following the other requirements within Prop 4 of not imposing any additional partisan information. But an application of a test ex ante, say if I was going to pull maps out of a simulated set where I've already screened out those that are not symmetrical, would be illegal as I understand it under Prop 4. You're not allowed to do that. So we don't do tests here ex ante. We need to develop the maps, and then we need to examine them after we've checked that we've developed the maps following the criteria, and then we check to see if we have placed any sort of undue advantage or disadvantage on a particular group. But all of that comes after. If I'm only going to look at maps that are symmetrical to begin with, then I've already violated Proposition 4, and anything that comes from that is going to be illegal.
Thank you. Do you guys want to add additional presentation before we go into committee questions? Do you want us to zoom in on the map? Do you want us to direct us here?
I'll make one additional point. What he just described as being illegal, we strongly suspect has happened. We suspect there was a data set incorporated into the test that Dr. Trendy applied, and we are unable to verify. It's as if we're told to buy a car and we can't lift the hood and look. And so that's
a pretty big allegation.
I'm going to call point of order again, Representative. You just demeaned us. You just demeaned us.
To the audience,
as legislators,
hold on.
to the public.
There's no outburst.
I will not have that. You called us somehow hiding or lying about everything that we've presented to say that these maps were not developed with any political data. You just misrepresented that, and that's out of order.
May I apologize and clarify, Senator? I appreciate that. That's not my intention.
It was what was said.
We have a suspicion that may have been done. The doctor on Monday.
You didn't say you had a suspicion. You called us out.
I think I said we strongly suspect that's been done. I don't think there's knowledge on the part of any committee member. I didn't say that. I think there has been a formulation of a test that looks like it's mathematically,
Representative, we haven't talked about the map at all, and we have focused on maps today. So this would have been appropriate on Monday when we were talking about tests, but can you show us your map? Do you want to show us your map?
Yes,
Do you want us to
Madam
ask
Chair.
questions? Okay, go ahead,
Just
Senator.
to finalize our presentation, Madam Chair, thank you. If we can zoom into the map, just to, one of the things that was important is, as we were following the criteria on those 7 standards that have been discussed at length, we feel we are meeting them and keeping communities of interest as much as whole as possible. And those communities of interest, as you all are aware, are not defined. So it is, up to different interpretation. I think we did a really good job and all the pieces and processes that have been described on those criterias. It is a map that I think meets the level of assessment that includes some of the statistical, and I'm going to go back and read it exactly how it is. That they will be judicial standards and best available data and scientific and statistical methods, including measures of partisan symmetry. We feel we've done that in this map as well, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. And I'll just end by saying that the piece of data sets and why I think my colleague has brought some of those concerns is when we're comparing apples to oranges makes it really hard. So that's all in the maps, because we only have 6 maps currently in this committee being presented, and that's why the sets of data, which again, as I said in my opening remarks, we just were told they're available, and staff has been communicating with me, Sarah specifically. I want to put that on the record. This 11 a.m. they were ready to give it to us, but I told them I don't want them right now. I'm here in committee, so that's important that we're competing. We can compare on 2 different biases testing. I don't care what the test it is. It should all be the same type of testing for purposes of our conversation and making a decision. That will be my closing remarks, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the presentation. We can do questions. Okay. So I guess my question would be, because you keep saying keeping to Prop 4, but when we look at Prop 4, city boundaries are sacrosanct. Those are the number 1. And so 13 boundary splits is a pretty significant number. Can you explain, did you view communities of interest differently?
Representative, I adjusted a map that had more municipal splits to have fewer municipal splits. But I think, as Legislative Council has suggested, municipal splits are not sacrosanct. They are one of the criteria that we follow in order as we try and incorporate other considerations into a map that is fully representative of Utahns and is fair to all Utahns, that counts their votes fairly. And so as we're making these adjustments, it is possible that we might double back in order to make sure we're closer to population parity, for example. That's one of the main reasons why we would divide municipalities. We might want to make the map more compact. So you had an example in one of the earlier maps that was not compact, that was because you were trying to hold to those municipal boundaries within a particular city. So I think that there's always going to be trade-offs as we're drawing maps. And the fact that there are municipal splits in this map, some of those are an artifact of the fact that I took a map that had already been prepared, I adjusted it and improved it, and that's where it landed.
Yeah, no, and I can appreciate that. It is difficult to do that when you're juggling a lot. Just in order of operations, legal counsel has said there is an order of what takes importance. Okay, additional questions from the committee. Representative Roberts?
Yeah, Madam Chair, my good friend from Mill Creek, he's had a lot of time and latitude to his questions, so I've got a series of questions I'd like to ask.
Go ahead and ask your questions.
If that's okay, but I'll try to keep them germane to the question of bias and statistical tests. Dr. Magleby, you've used the word bias a lot, and I want to talk to you today about bias. And it's important because we know that a biased source will yield a biased map. And look, we got you on the agenda yesterday, so I didn't have a lot of time, but I looked at some of your public tweets. And I want to read some of those public tweets because I think they speak to this question of bias. On November 10th, 2021, you responded to a tweet by a local reporter at Fox 13 about the governor refusing to veto this legislature's original map. And here's what you tweeted, and I quote, "This is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. Step 1, rig the system to systematically exclude the opposition. Step 2, gaslight the opposition and say that they are free to compete in the rigged system you set up. Shameful." Now, Dr. Magleby, I think a lot of Utahns are going to find that language inflammatory, especially against the backdrop of our current political environment. Do you think this legislature is authoritarian?
It's Representative Roberts, right? Representative Roberts, I have no recollection of that tweet. So did I tweet that or am I retweeting someone?
I've got the tweet from you right here. Daniel Magleby, public tweet. It's not a retweet.
Let's be clear what's at stake in this process. And I think I watched the hearing on Monday and I appreciate what it is that you all are trying to accomplish here. This gets at the core of our democracy, how it is that we represent people in places like this, in places like Washington, D.C. And if we're going to push forward a map that systematically discriminates against people of any particular type, whether that's a partisan type, whether that's a racial type, whether that's anything else, religious, as the case may be,
Dr.
yes,
Magleby,
that is a tactic of
If
authoritarian.
you guys,
I
if you can
appreciate
direct
the-
your questions through the chair, and then again,
Chair, my question
answer
is,
your
does Dr. Magleby think the legislature is authoritarian, as his tweet says?
I think what I said.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Senator.
Okay.
State your point of order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We were not allowed to ask questions about partisanship or even the background of Professor Trendy as the higher.
Senator Escamilla, Representative Owens asked that if he specifically only drew maps for Republicans and that he only drew for one party. I agree. I think those questions were completely wading into an area of deposition. But he did ask that question and did ask which states and did ask on ideological reasons. I think if you're going to bring an expert to our committee, most of us do a quick social media search when someone comes in, and I'm looking at the tweet as well, and it is concerning. So I think to bring someone in to offer credibility to a map that we didn't get 24 hours to look at, it's a fair question. But we can ask the representative to make sure to keep moving along with this question.
And that's okay. And just to be extremely clear, Madam Chair, about the 24-hour cut. Okay? Because now this is the problem we're having. Remove your experts, your expert and my expert.
Right.
Right? Okay. So the conversation here is a 24-hour conversation. And we asked for data sets that we never got to do that. And here's the problem. To begin with, the materials can be before the 24-hour deadline because this is it's not like a regular committee.
I'm talking about the map.
Yeah,
There is a public notice requirement.
Well,
when we post an agenda.
I checked with staff, and we can talk more about this. But here's okay, that's important, Madam Chair, because you make it sound like you guys are doing something illegal or that we did something illegal by putting something before the 24 hour
No, that's not
notice.
what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying when we posted our maps, we gave 72 hours for the committee to review. I'm not saying you did something illegal.
Okay.
You can amend a committee hearing. I'm saying that we tried to get the maps so that it could go out with the initial public
And we
notice.
tried our best with limited resources, and I think that's all I want to make as a point, that it was never intentional to be hiding any information. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you. Really quick, Representative
Madam Chair,
Roberts has a few more questions.
I do think this speaks to bias, and we've talked a lot about that. And I'd like to ask my questions, if that's okay.
If you want to go to your next question, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, Madam Chair, could I answer his question though? And it takes
I think
one word.
he's asked you twice.
I'm just going to say no. I don't think that you're authoritarians,
Thank
and I
you
have
for
high
that.
hopes that you will do well by the people of Utah, giving them a map that represents their interests in Washington.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Well,
Representative
I want to
Roberts.
continue on a couple more tweets. You said here, October 1st, 2020, you said the system is already rigged in favor of Republicans. Democrats can make things a little better if they add DC and Puerto Rico as states. Now, again, I got to say, the people of Utah are going to ask, and the media should ask, is it your intent to use this map to rig the system in favor of Democrats?
That is not my intention with this map. I have no intention of rigging the system. Madam Chair, that's my answer.
Thank you. Okay.
And Madam Chair, there's dozens of these tweets. I'd encourage the public to go look at them in the media. This would be a question for the bill sponsor about this map. And look, I'm not trying to lecture anybody on what Prop 4 means. We know what it means. You're supposed to not include partisan data or partisan considerations in your map drawing process. But aren't you concerned about the optics of tweets from your expert that read like a left-wing activist?
And I'll answer first, Madam Chair, if that's okay.
Good.
And I appreciate that you let us present both because it's together the map. So the answer, Representative Roberts. I'm sorry, I know you're new in the legislature. Nice to meet you. No, I'm not, and I'll tell you why. Because I think why we were desperately looking for an expert, and I will encourage staff to share the process to get to the expert of Sean Trendy, that is considered a Republican hired. So to answer your question in terms of optics, and I think I'm not concerned because it's the same as what you guys have had in your expert, and we couldn't even get the data. And that's why we end up hiring someone, Representative. So I think you are actually getting to the core of the problem, and that is we are supposed to work as a legislature in a nonpartisan way for this process. And you're correct, this is hard, getting us to this conversation and everything. And we attempted, and I'll speak for my chair in my chamber, because I've known him for a long time and we worked together for a long time. We were conversations about trying to get a process that was fair for the public. And when we couldn't access info, which was the first time we noticed that we couldn't get through information, that's what made it really hard. So I will say, I think what you're describing, these are experts, and Dr. Trendy, which I reviewed the same things you did, of our expert, and you did ask me, by the way, on Monday, his name, and we didn't have a map, right? We were still working. That's why I'm like, I don't even know if we're gonna have a map and timing. That I was hoping that we could just get through having all access to the same info. So we didn't get it. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Trendy looks, to me very suspicious. Like probably Dr. Magleby looks for you, but they are experts in their areas. They hold their degrees and information, and I think that did the purpose of getting an expert. Now, the Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel that staffs all of us hire one expert for all of us, and we never got access to that expert.
So we'll have Senator Sandel. Senator Sandel is going to respond really quick, but Representative Roberts, did you have
two? These are more on substance. A couple questions.
Can we have just really quick pivot? I think Senator Sandel has some comments on process really quick, because I know you were in the thick of that.
Yeah, so this would be to either one of your presenters, colleagues. You keep asking that you were not able to access a data set, but it's my understanding that the data set you're trying to ask was analytical. The data set that you're trying to retrieve is analytical.
I think that's fair. It's
okay.
We're asking.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. And so, what stopped you from? Because the analytics comes to the application of the map. If you're inferring that the data set somehow would have influenced your ability to draw a map, I think we need to understand that, because I'm saying, and your expert said that any analytics are applied after you draw a map, but you're claiming that you didn't have time to draw a map, that you couldn't draw a map, when the public draws maps, some as little as 6 minutes, quite honestly. I see him smiling, but I'm asking, why was the data set so essential that you could not produce a map on Monday or today inside 24 hours, but you're claiming that you needed this data set, which is purely analytical after the fact? You cannot apply it. So you can't have this both ways.
No, let me explain.
You cannot have it. You cannot say we were held up because we didn't receive analytical data, But then you're saying you didn't use analytical data to produce a map in a timely fashion.
Can I answer that question, Madam
Go ahead.
Chair? Thank you. So you're correct. By the way, we draw many, many maps. The making of maps is not drawing maps. The making of maps was with the help of our staff that's sitting with you. You guys presented maps that were created by the expert that we weren't told was not going to support us on the mapping creation as the minority caucus. So we're getting now into these details, guys. So this is correct. I didn't need the analytics to draw a map. I can do that. Like I said, they help us for hours, for 3 consecutive days. We were here for hours and hours. We saw each other sometimes. That's not what I'm talking about. That in order to compare for the testing, because there is one test that's being utilized by the expert that was hired by the Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel. And that test is a bias test, a symmetry bias test. Am I correct? Or that's what's happening. So when we didn't have a way to, those analytical data sets that you're talking about, we couldn't even have access to test to even know what's happening. So the comparison, that's where we were talking about, Mr. Chair. We can't even, so not about drawing a map, because the map, like you said, it's in a software, right? And they helped us, but you guys had the maps done by a higher professional contract that was not the staff only. Go
So
ahead.
if I can follow up, I'm having a hard time understanding. You just said that you didn't have the data set to analyze your map. So you were going to then use the data set to draw a different map if it wasn't, because what I'm hearing is that you wanted to combine the data set, the analytical data set, into the drawing of the map.
Not on the drawing of the map, on the process to get us to all the Prop 4 pieces.
So those Prop 4 pieces, in my understanding, are not part of the data set that you're asking for. The Prop 4.7 pieces are explicitly described and explained by the court. Okay. Then there's the analytical process of coming back in after you've presented a map. And quite honestly, I'm going to assume that if you created a map and then you applied the process to determine if that was the map you were going to then present, that would be a little subject. It's like, how many times did you run that iteration to see if basically it passes or fails? And my understanding is you had every access to the same analytics that we did to run a map through. You could have run a dozen maps through Mr. Trendy's program and had them come back pass or fail.
And we did.
Okay, so you had access to Dr.
But
Trendy.
not to the expert we hire as the Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel, Mr. Chair.
Well, isn't that Dr. Trendy?
No. I mean, Dr. Trendy was providing you assistance on creation of maps.
But he also was available to you.
No, sir.
I'm going to ask legal counsel. I think he was available to give you a pass-fail test.
Yes.
That's what's saying. I think we're really getting off on different topics here. I think if we can get us back to the map that's in front of us and have that discussion, I think that'd be helpful in what we normally do. I will. So yeah, that's important. I also I think there's some frustration to hear that there wasn't enough time, because we actually asked for a stay to have more time. And if you look at the social media of the minority caucuses, they were applauding the decision and not giving us a stay. But I think we found it's much harder to draw a map in the window of time we were given. And also, we have had our heads bashed in since we passed the initial map on Prop 4. And I just assumed that the minority caucus would have drawn a map at some point to show our map up. So I think that's where you hear this frustration around the timing here. But let me go to the committee for additional questions. We've got...
Madam Chair, I had a...
Oh, Representative Roberts, we'll come back to you, but then we do have other lights on. So, Representative Roberts.
Dr. Mugabe, this goes to more the substance of some of your research. You have a paper titled Assessing Gerrymander After the 2020 Census, that I read. And you analyzed the map this legislature adopted in 2021 to see if it was gerrymandered or not. And it looked to me that you used 5 different statistical methodologies that assess whether or not a map is gerrymandered. One of those tests you call the partisan symmetry test. You use that specific language on page 13 of your paper. And it's in big bold letters on page 13, you write partisan symmetry, and then in parentheses, you write Dr. King, which I presume is referring to the same partisan symmetry test that we've been discussing here. Our code from Prop 4, the language on the ballot that's now in statute, explicitly says that the legislature and the commission shall use the best available statistical methods, including measures of partisan symmetry test. Why is it unreasonable to use Dr. King's test, the same test that you used in your paper and called a partisan symmetry test? Why is it unreasonable for us to use your definition?
Madam Chair, so I'm addressing my comments to you, Representative, or to the chair? What's the procedure here?
Go ahead. You can respond.
I can
But
respond
through
directly.
but through the chair is typically how you
Is
do
how
it.
you'd like me to
Yeah,
do it?
yeah. Go ahead.
Good. I'm sure since you read it, you caught the part where we said that we shouldn't, while we shouldn't apply it to states where outcomes of elections are lopsided, we would go ahead and demonstrate how those findings in a place like Utah can be misleading when a more appropriate test is administered. So as an academic exercise, yes, we use Dr. King's test. However, Dr. King in 1989, not long after he proposes symmetry as a way of evaluating maps, says there is no way we should use this test in lopsided outcomes. Bias is not the right test in a place like Utah. Bias is the partisan bias test that Dr. Trendy has applied it here. We don't see the mathematical calculations. And this is why we were interested in seeing these data, because we were curious, because we were trying to follow a neutral process. And as I understand it, Representative Curtis and Senator Escamilla were following a neutral process. And yet he was arriving at an outcome every single time a map went to him where there was some problem with bias. And yet every single map that Dr. Trendy drew somehow didn't have partisan bias. I haven't seen you all propose a map that violates partisan bias. That suggests to me that we're screening out maps ex ante, again, sorry, professor speak, ahead of time, that were drawn according to neutral processes, but we're only going to include those that were going to pass some kind of partisan symmetry test as Dr. Trendy has devised it in this particular instance. We call that, in my line of work, selecting on the dependent variable. That is, selecting on an outcome that we want to see realized in our data. And that's a big problem. And that's why we wanted to see the data, not to develop the maps, but because I was trying to figure out how on earth we could arrive at those kinds of conclusions. So the tests absolutely matter, and we need to choose the right test for the right circumstances. This bias test that we've been talking about, that Dr. Trendy has suggested in his analysis, is not the right test for Utah.
Last
Really
question,
quick,
Madam
just
Chair.
to clarify, similar to how you were able to send a map and then get back a test, send back a map, so are we. So we're not going to present something that fails that. And that's where I think we had the same access in that point of, okay, that one didn't work, here we go. And staff just reminded me of that. So I just want to make sure
Madam Chair, can I?
it's nothing nefarious here. But go ahead.
Thank you for that clarification. You're correct. We all got that same service.
Correct.
But on Monday's testimony by Dr. Trendy, he said he did those maps. The 5 maps that you guys presented on
Correct.
Monday.
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
So
we did not draw them. I see.
Are we?
I understand what
Okay,
you're saying.
thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Representative Roberts, do you have any more questions?
Last
Because it's a
question.
Christmas tree up
Yep,
here.
I get it. I've asked only 3. I did read that part of the paper, and I guess my point is just simply that in statute it says partisan symmetry, and so we're just trying to define what it says in statute from Prop 4, what the voters voted for, and we are using the definition that you used. And I take your point, but you use that definition in your academic research, and we're just attaching that same definition to what was in Prop 4. Here's my last question. On page 17 of your research paper, you said, in there, you list out a table of a bunch of states, non-competitive small states is where you grouped Utah. I don't think that's controversial. And you show different tests and how Utah scored on the test. And you're right. You didn't use the partisan symmetry test for, I think, the reasons that you've explained here. But you did use the observed versus expected test. And unless I'm missing something, what I see the table say is no gerrymander. And so my question to the bill sponsors is, do you agree with your academic expert's opinion that the original map in 2021 that was adopted was not gerrymandered? Because that's what it says.
So you're asking me, I haven't reviewed that, yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. I think any other questions,
Could I
Representative?
have? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Madam Chair.
Representative Roberts, do you want?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam.
Okay. All right. Next question. Senator Fillmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to start with a different line of questioning that's map focused, but I'm going to start with this one instead, because twice now we've heard from the presenters that accusations that we are violating the law by ex ante looking at partisan data. Do you have any evidence to support that accusation?
I'd like to interject just to clarify. There's no accusation any member of the committee is looking at anything ex ante. It's the question of how the expert designed a test for the post facto test. But I'll let him answer. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding. I don't think anybody on the committee looked at data ahead of time. The question is,
okay, that's helpful for me to know. You're saying, right, you have no evidence and
I
no
have no
belief that
suspicion
anybody on this committee looked at
No
partisan data
suspicion
prior
whatsoever.
to. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, you were referencing a comment I made. If I may respond, Madam
Well,
Chair.
you
Actually,
and
it was Representative Owens. But go ahead, Senator.
You
Do
were,
you have
you were
any?
one of them.
I was one of them. So the language of the statute is that it has to be purposefully or unduly.
Correct.
And so unduly suggests that if we arrive at a scenario where we have bias in a map, even if it wasn't purposeful, but it was unduly
Right.
created by virtue of the way that we drew example maps from that cold data set that Dr. Trendy was talking about and only examined that cold data set, that would be undue purpose, not purposeful necessarily, introduction of bias. And
What is your accusation then?
No, I don't have an accusation. I don't have the data.
You made it. You strongly suspect that the committee has been looking at this bad data.
If I said strongly suspect, then I misspoke.
That was Representative
Senator. Excuse me. I'm getting everyone's titles. My eyes are not as good as they used to be, and so I apologize that I can't. I'm not seeing all your titles exactly right. There is the standard accepted methodology for evaluating the purposeful or undue favoritism towards one party is what's called an ensemble analysis. The ensemble analysis is what we've been sort of referring as a shorthand here as the Harvard Alarm Project. But Dr. Trendy does reference ensemble analyses, or at least ensembles of data that he's developed. But I haven't seen his analysis of where his maps, the maps that you have advanced as maps A through C, fall on that. So the purpose of an ensemble analysis is to evaluate the likelihood that a particular map could have emerged through a neutral, nonpartisan, party-blind process. So we look at the...
I think you're answering a question I didn't ask.
Yeah.
Just to be very clear here, you do not have any accusation that any member of this committee inappropriately looked at partisan data.
I'm not making that accusation.
Okay, that's the answer to my question.
And may I,
Senator, do you have? We have to get to public comment, and we're actually running against a.
Then I just
stop.
have one.
So
I'll have
go
one
ahead.
more question.
And if we can, there is a map in front of us. So we keep.
I know.
Even to this, we're talking about all the other maps, but not the map that was drawn that we're supposed
That's
to be
fine.
reviewing.
I'm trying to. Here's my question. I'm going to phrase it as a two-parter. Because you said that you had created this map on the basis of another map, and I'd like to know what that map is. And then further in your testimony, in your presentation, you talked about the balance of things. And so that's why you have 13 city splits and 4 county splits, even though those were priorities number 1 and 2, according to Prop 4. I would like to know what you sacrificed that priority in order to achieve in some other lesser priority. in drawing this, and I'm curious why 13 splits of the of the number one priority in order to achieve better results on, I don't know, number 4 or 5, or I'll leave that to you. I don't care.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to answer your question, so the instructions as were given is we were told very clearly by the courts, and it's been mentioned here, that we couldn't use the IRC maps. So we started with an IRC map, which I think we explained that at the beginning of our opening remarks.
Which one?
Orange.
Okay.
Sorry, I know they're
And
colored.
it has more than 13 city splits. The orange
Yes.
map. Okay.
So the second half
But
of the
then
question,
the-
how did you decide to then what?
Yeah.
What
Well,
were the
we
other-
went from that map to reduce as much as we can the splits of the cities, going back to the first priority.
So you went from how many to how many?
I think it
you
was
landed at
14 to 13.
You went from 14 to 13.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my concern about that is that Prop 4's language is very clear that these need to be followed to the greatest extent practicable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just heard you say that 13 city splits is the greatest extent practicable. You
For
reduced
our
that
map.
as far as you could,
Yes.
and you landed at 13 city splits.
Correct.
And,
Master.
and that's because you were trying to prioritize what other priority?
Well, I think all the other pieces were being met at that point. We started with a map from the IRC. I mean, I think that's where we start in with that map, which I think they did a excellent job as we were both following that process. I was not part of the committee, or of course not the IRC, but I thought their process, and as this is the bill with Representative Owens and myself, we felt that process was fair and clear, but I know we couldn't use those maps, so we went from there to priority number 1, reduce municipalities.
I would like to add a clarifying comment. Just, there's no accusation anybody on the committee did anything ahead of time to look at data.
I got that.
Our concern.
Yeah, Representative Owens, if we can, we've beat this to death. We have like a ton of people that want to ask questions, and we actually have the public here to give comments. So, Representative Gracious.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got questions specific to the map.
Go ahead.
Joe, can I get you to zoom in on that Immigration Canyon piece? I'm concerned about the number of splits on here, but there's this little hook. And if we could go to a satellite view, it's easier to see. There are pieces, when I was going through this last night, and I actually got in my car and drove a couple of these too, just to make sure I understood. And I know we're looking at 2020, but this area has been around since longer than that. But there are these really odd carve outs. There are places in Salt Lake County where one single house is carved out from all of their neighbors at the end of a cul-de-sac. There's this little wonky spot. This home's been around since 2013. It's cut in half. Can you just kind of scroll down that canyon for me, please, Joe? And so as you kind of go, you can see, can we zoom out a little bit? Sorry, we're getting a little close in there. Lovely homes, but there's just random, and as you kind of keep going, there's more cul-de-sacs that you'll just see. And I understand we're probably following a road boundary here to some extent, but not all of it. And Immigration Canyon's technically a township. However, townships were specifically stipulated to in the lawsuit to be part of that municipality split, to try not to do that. So this is just, again, one example. I've got a whole list of them. And, how come the person on that side of the street, well, some of these are even on the same side of the street. Why does one home get carved in, one home right next door get carved out, but then the one on the other side gets carved back in? It's just really, really interesting how some of these boundaries are. 13 municipalities. So it's Immigration Canyon, it's Bountiful, it's Centerville, Eagle Mountain, which the lines there are hilarious to me, actually. That's an area I know well, obviously. Lehigh, American Fork, Linden, Midvale, Morgan, Orem, Vineyard, West Bountiful, West Jordan. And that doesn't even count the unincorporated areas. Croydon, the little unincorporated area of Croydon, cut in half. Callio, a little ranching community with maybe a dozen ranches, cut right down the middle. If that's not a community of interest with only a handful of ranches, I don't know what is a community of interest out in the middle of Juab County, out by the Nevada line. The number of splits here is really concerning. 13 versus other map proposals are 3. 4 county splits versus other map proposals are 3. And then that doesn't even talk about the mild population deviation that we heard about a few minutes ago, which went back to my earlier question when I was asking about that, where if we adopt this map, we are automatically open to additional legal action based on what the U.S. Supreme Court has said. And that is a real concern to me also. And so I guess that's not really a question unless you wanted to say why the line weaves in and out, but it is more a comment that I have on this map specifically.
Do you want to answer that?
Certainly. We're limited by the disposition of boundaries in census blocks. So I didn't have access to better data than the data that are available through the census. And the census is where those lines are drawn. So the other thing, as we're looking at the satellite map, it's not clear to me that this is a map from 2020 or sometime after. You referenced the fact there's been additional development. I believe the chair said on Monday that we can't include any additional demographic information that was collected following the 2020 census.
That's correct. And these are from 2013.
These are from 2013.
So these would have been included in that.
But you referenced that there were new houses at the end of a cul-de-sac and there's been new development in this area.
No, the one at the end of the cul-de-sac is not new.
Okay, so the problem we have is the Census Bureau develops these data and then provides them to the public. Anyone can download them from the Census Bureau.
Correct.
And then evaluate and build maps and evaluate using those boundaries. Where the Census Bureau places those lines is important. I absolutely agree. Here, as we're striving to meet those criteria of population parity across districts, there will be decisions made about which blocks fall on which side. We're trying our best to balance it, and the boundary has to go somewhere. And so we can, the boundary has to go somewhere. We did our best here, given the timeline, given our access to data, given our access to other resources to try and develop a map that we think is fair for the people of Utah.
So can I just ask, because I get census blocks are wonky, but you still are making a conscious decision in how you follow them when you're drawing a line. And the data to draw maps, I mean, any person can go out. There's the free platform, I think it's called Dave's. There's lots of free platforms. So access to analytical data doesn't impact how you draw a neighborhood. Okay. Any other questions, Representative Gracious?
I just have a follow-up. I do want to say, I know the census blocks play a role into it. The areas that I'm asking about, I'm sure it is for some, but the ones I specifically referenced were not census block related. They were all in existence prior to the most recent census. Some of them are 30 years old. So it was just, they're just interesting little spots where I think, honestly, some voters, and a lot of them are in Salt Lake County, would really be disenfranchised with the way that some of these boundaries are drawn. So
thank you. Okay, Senator McKell, bring it over to the Senate side.
Yeah, I can use the map out. I just want to talk about the map itself, and these are more comments than questions. And if there's a response, that's fine. But when I look at, so I pulled up the Prop 4 criteria because I think that's what the court has asked us to do. First one I want to focus on, minimizing the division of municipalities and counties across multiple districts. And that's a concern for me. I'm going to repeat several things that have already been said. You've got 13 city splits. You've got 4 county splits. That, to me, that is a failure of Prop 4. If we're looking at that criteria, I think there are maps that do a better job. The next criteria that I think is important, making districts geographically compact. I look at that 2nd congressional district that's created in that map, and there's not an analysis that I can make that's compact. I can make an analysis that 3 and 4 are compact, but 2 is not compact. And I don't think you can have it both ways. And I think it's very clear that Prop 4 said make geographically compact. That's not compact. I think that fails when I look at the plain meaning of what the court has asked us to do, of what Prop 4 has asked us to do, what voters voted for. I think that is a failure on its face. The next one is ensure districts are contiguous and ease of transportation throughout the districts. One of the things that I distinguish here is the transportation corridors, especially Lake Powell. We dealt with that in some of the other maps. We made it possible to go across those districts. I look at this second congressional district, and this is a feat to try to do that, to pop around. If I were to go from Kanab to San Juan County, that's nearly impossible without going around Lake Powell, and I think that's very problematic. The other one I look at is directly out of Prop 4 is preserving traditional neighborhoods and communities of interest. You've got 13 city splits, and it's not clear what a community of interest is, but I would assume it would be a city itself, and I think that is problematic to me. The last one I want to focus on is just following natural and geographic boundaries and features, and I just don't see that. I see our state, I see our natural boundaries, and I don't see that represented. I see a large swath that's got to be 3/4 of our entire state represented in one district, and I don't like that map for that reason. And those are my comments.
Thank you. Additional comments on the bill on the bill, but also the map from the committee. Senator Sandel.
Thank you. Were you aware that the original orange map split 13 cities and 5 counties?
That
did you have them counted up? Because that's what I had counted.
in the original orange.
In the original orange map had 13 cities and 5 county splits. This map has 13 cities and 4 county splits. Just a question.
So
if you weren't aware of that, that's okay.
we
We can go back and double check the facts.
I don't have the data at my
Okay,
fingertips,
according to my count,
unfortunately.
that's what I've got. Also, because we're talking about the orange map being the basis of this map, were you aware that there is video evidence of the Independent Redistricting Commission drawing on Dave's redistricting tool with partisan data sitting to the side of their drawing?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay,
Senator.
so that didn't play into why you chose the orange map.
Absolutely not, Senator.
Okay, I just wondered to be clear that's video evidence is there. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I was not aware that there's a video. I was not as involved as many others on this process of redistricting. So it's the first time I heard about a video. It is a map that was presented by the IRC where we started, and we've been very clear from the beginning. Just to be clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other comments, we will conclude this discussion on this map file, and we'll take this to the public who's been very patiently waiting. So can you, if you are in the room to speak to I'm ready for this, but how many of you are here to speak to it? Okay, great. Can you hold up so I can just count you?
Yeah, hold up so we can count.
1, 2. I can't see Representative Romero's. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have to do your thing. If you're 20, okay. If you're online and want to speak to this process, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, again, we took a lot of public comment as well on Monday, but want to give people a chance. We're going to take 20 in the room and 10 online. So to expedite this process, come on up in the 2 chairs. Please sign in while you're waiting to speak. It might be helpful if we can just have you stand to the right side next to this gentleman with the big camera, if you would like. So you're not blocking other people if you want to speak to it. Oh, nope. Go all the way over, and if not, this left side of the room doesn't get to see our lovely faces. So go all the way over to that side of the room. Fantastic. Line up. First 20 people. That's what we'll take in the room. Then we'll go 10 online. Please state who you are and who you represent.
Madam Chair.
If you testified on Monday, please allow others who were not here on Monday to testify first. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, hi, my name is Mike Carey. I'm the chair of the Salt Lake County Republican Party, And
I'm so sorry, Mike. I need to start the timer. We're doing 2 minutes apiece.
Got
Go
it.
ahead. Okay.
as I said, I'm the chair of the Salt Lake County Republican Party. I've welcomed the comments of the chair at the beginning about the constitutionality of this judicial oversight. I also want to commend Representative Brooks for talking about water and basins. That's something I study like a nerd, unfortunately. But I want to be really clear about one thing. Prop 4 was a citizen-initiated statute, not a constitutional amendment. And the Constitution is very clear that this is reserved for the legislature. This judge's fabrication of a, quote, fundamental right to protect this statute from repeal has no grounding in our Constitution's plain text. And it's a perilous precedent that empowers unelected judges to rewrite our separation of powers, turning a narrowly passed ballot measure into an untouchable edict. At the time of this passage, there was 1,658,457 registered voters in the state of Utah, and 30%, 502,279, voted for Prop 4. That's hardly a mandate. So simply put, let's stop using activist judges, legislative initiatives through outside parties with big money donors who pour like those who poured millions into the Better Boundaries to buy influence over our maps. These deep pocket of outsiders, including progressive groups and labor unions, funneled nearly $2.8 million total into the campaign, against which there was $0 against it, aiming to wrestle control from Utah's elected representatives. I think it's also interesting that when we look at map 6 as it was presented today, to first have the members of the opposition party to talk about.
Thank you, sir. I need you to conclude your comments.
Got it.
Everybody in the room, first chime, 30 seconds. When we hear this chime, we need you to conclude.
Got it.
Thank you.
Sorry. First time doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Max Sims, Utah County. So I want to focus my comments on what I think the legislature should use beyond just the 7 criteria, because you have 5 maps that has been shown. They fit that criteria. So what other considerations should be important to Utahns in deciding of those 5 maps which are good? As we look at Utah is a very diverse geographical state. It's a very diverse demographical state, and industrial diversity as well. And it's important for us to realize the value that Utah has in its rural areas, and the value that those rural areas have, not just to rural Utah, but to urban Utah. We have school land trust lands that are across this whole state that have very significant impact on our educational system. We need to make sure that we have 4 Congress people that have ingrained interest not only in our urban centers, but also in our rural centers. We cannot leave our rural centers out to dry. We need to have diversity in these seats. And I hope that our legislature will strongly look at that need for that urban-rural mix for all of our seats, so that we have the need and we have that voice in Congress to fight for our rural lands that are important for all of Utahns, not just those parts of us that live in rural Utah. I talked to a friend of mine from Tooele County just this morning with the concerns. 89% of Tooele County is federally controlled lands, and they need strong representation in their battle with the federal government on those lands in their counties and that interaction that they have. So I strongly, ask you as a committee and as a general legislature, please do not forget that need for urban and rural mix in all of our congressional seats. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. To the committee, there is lunch in the back if you want to grab it. If you're dying, go ahead and grab it. Next up, okay, go ahead.
I'm Melanie Monaster. I'm from Summit County. And I'd like to speak to the importance of representation for all Utahns in our federal delegation. We need every member. We only have 4 members of Congress. We need every member of Congress in this state to understand both rural and urban communities. We don't want our delegation to be cordoned off to a small and sequestered part of our state, but we rather want them to represent and understand the state as a whole, and to have constituents from unique and different parts of the state in their districts. So we don't want urban only districts in this state. The needs of our rural residents are unique, from agriculture to federal lands issues to the national parks and and our water rights. We definitely want to make sure that we're taking those rural citizens into account as we draw our districts.
Thank you, and bonus for being done early. So, all right, go ahead. Next up, please state your name. Go ahead and have a seat. When she's done, to make sure you sign in.
Hi, I'm Stuart Hepworth from South Jordan. So as Chair Ferrucci said a bit ago, in Prop 4, preservation of city boundaries is sacrosanct, or at least prioritized above all else besides population equality and federal law. Dr. Trendy's 5 maps all split what I had originally thought to be the bare minimum of 3 cities. However, I had thought last week that it might be possible to hit the 0 population deviation with 0 city splits. Yesterday, I submitted the culmination of a series of maps I've submitted that achieve this, with yesterday's submission not yet on the public comment website, titled 2025 SH No Split 7, having not only 0 city splits and 0 population deviation, but also the bare minimum of 3 county splits, splitting Salt Lake, Utah, and a tiny bit of Weber, as it's properly pronounced, southeast of Huntsville. I followed the committee's process in drawing the map, not viewing partisan data during the map's creation, and ran it on Dr. Trendy's test after submitting it to the committee to the best of my ability, since I could only do the quantile analysis from Harvard's alarm data, not Dr. Trendy's proprietary data sets, and the map performed similarly to Dr. Trendy's 5 maps on all of his criteria. I believe this map is categorically superior to all 5 of Dr. Trendy's maps in following Prop 4's criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have a question from Coach
Mr.
Sandel.
Thank you. Glad to have you back again today. So my question is around the maps that you've drawn and submitted.
Yes.
In the past, you've drawn them on Dave's redistricting tool.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Dave's redistricting has an option before you begin drawing the map to turn off partisan data.
Thanks. So when you submitted your video, which I watched,
yes,
on drawing, what are the red and the blue shades on that map?
Yeah.
When you drew?
Yes.
And what is the box in the right-hand corner that looks political data? That was the map you drew.
That map was drawn with political data turned on. That was on for the benefit of the public. So
at least that map was drawn with political data available.
Map was the less than 6 minute speed run drawing a fair map was drawn with political data turned on for the benefit of the public.
As part of the maps, all the maps I'm considering, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, thank you. Oh wait, Senator Fillmore, do you have a question? Sorry, Stuart, come back up.
You can't get enough of me.
Well,
you're a part of our committee.
I saw your map online yesterday and read your comments online, which were a little bit different, I think, than what you said today. I think, and I don't have it in front of me, but you said yesterday that you were able to get that down to 0, but not without sacrificing some other priorities, like so I think you specifically represented compactness, right?
Yeah.
That in order to do that, you really kind of have to stretch things out. You can get to 0.
So
if you draw the lines up like this, right?
Yeah.
And you sacrifice the compactness. Is that correct?
An earlier attempt that I made on, I forget if it was Saturday or Sunday. I posted that map on Twitter. I did not submit it to the committee. I tried achieving 0 city splits, and it with only 3 county splits, and I was not satisfied with that result. The map that I submitted yesterday, 2025 SH No Split 7, does, I believe, adequately conform to compactness.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up, go ahead, sir. You've been waiting.
Yes, hi. My name is John Schofer. I'm a resident of Salt Lake City. I've lived in Utah for over a decade, almost 2 decades. I voted for Proposition 4. I've been following this 6, 7 years saga with great interest. And I did want to acknowledge that you guys have articulated that the truncated time period has been very challenging to work within, and then you've been somewhat critical of Owens and Escamilla for not being able to work within the time frame. I am not a lobbyist. I'm not a special interest. I'm not a $1 million corporation. I'm a Utah constituent voter, and I would urge the state to add their map as map F so that it can be fully considered along with the other 5 maps. If there are concerns about whatever the shortcomings are, I mean, if you improve the map in this aspect, it just improves it in others. It's 1 map against 5. I think it should have a fair shot.
So can I comment on that, Madam
Yeah, go
Chair?
ahead.
So yes, this map is publicly available. It's on the same website as the legislature maps with the public maps. All the public maps are there.
Yeah,
they can
and,
receive.
And when it's considered by the judge, ultimately, I would like.
So our decision, we will not decide today on forwarding just 1 map. All of those maps will be there for public comment. I think that's important, an important point that we need to make sure that all of those maps will be there. They'll be for the 10-day public comment period.
Oh, and one final comment. All of you commented that there were 7 criteria for Prop 4, but you mentioned 8, so I didn't. I wasn't 100% crystal clear on either. But thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, go ahead.
Marianne Christensen, Executive Director of Utah Legislative Watch. I really appreciate the delicate circumstances that you meet as a redistricting committee here. I recognize that that Proposition 4 was in clear violation of Utah Constitution Article 9, Section 1, which gives sole authority over districting to the legislature with no caveats. So it's unfortunate that we're here. It also violates the U.S. Constitution, which protects us according to Article 4, Section 4, the Guarantee Clause, which guarantees our constitutional republic in every state. And the judge's recent rulings elevating citizen initiatives over the constitutional authority of the legislature is really egregious. I'd like to echo concerns of districts not representing the rural areas of Utah. If I could choose a map, I would choose C at this point, according to my understanding. There are certain things that are issues that are vital to rural Utah, but they are vital to the entire state, such as the energy industries are found in rural Utah, and energy equals prosperity for the state. Mining concerns, severance tax is a huge part of our income to the state. Agriculture, going forward, it's going to be really important that we be able to protect clean food. And so we need people in Congress representing those 3 rural issues besides the federal control of our lands here in Utah. I think that the districts we've used in the past that the legislatures put in place have worked pretty well for Democrats. They're only 14% of the total the total registered voters. In fact, unaffiliated voters outnumber them 2-1. And Republican registered voters outnumber them almost 4-1. They now hold 21% of the Senate and 19% of the House. And so I think that the districting that the Republican legislature has done in the past has served the Democrats well. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, Tiffany Smith, registered Republican, Mill Creek, retired attorney. I'm not going to do a plain reading of the statute, which I have here. I understand we're not allowed to give you things, but certain words are underlined, and I have an analogy underlined the same way. But I want to point out that a plain reading of the statute delineates several required elements for compliant maps. Both the legislature and commission must participate, which I understand you're not doing because of judicial decree, but both must use all of the following parameters: judicial standards, plural; data, plural; scientific and statistic methods, plural; measures, plural, of partisan symmetry. And I'd like to point out that partisan symmetry is an umbrella and partisan bias test is one piece of that. Many people get confused when they read legal jargon because they have not studied what words like shall and mean in legal terms. Here's an analogy using layperson terms. You are part of a neighborhood group creating a fruit salad to enter into the state fair competition. The state judge gives you the following parameters for a salad entry to qualify. The county and the neighborhood must use the official rules and the best available tropical fruits and local fruits, including stone fruits, to make a fruit salad that meets the rules required for a salad to be an eligible state fair entry. So, each entry would need to be reviewed by the county and the neighborhood entering it. The entry must follow all general rules about entries listed by the judges, and specifically, the fruit salad must include both tropical and local fruits, including stone fruits, to be eligible. Because of the plural language, only a salad with at least 2 tropical fruits and at least 2 local fruits, of which at least 2 must be stone fruits, would be allowed to enter. An entry like that probably wouldn't win because it would only have 4 fruits, like pineapple, mango, peach, and plum. But it would meet the judge's requirements. Would a salad made entirely of peaches be allowed to enter the state fair? Of course not. Even though peaches are a very important stone fruit local to Utah, it doesn't matter. A peach salad cannot enter the state fair competition. The legislature is submitting, per judicial order, the map entries without the commission. They want us to believe that including only one partisan symmetry test, the partisan bias test, is sufficient to meet all the other criteria listed in the statute. It's not sufficient. It's peach salad.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. All right, next up.
Joanne Frost, Cottonwood Heights. I spent 10 years as a planning and zoning commissioner for Salt Lake County, 5 years in Cottonwood Heights as a planning and zoning land use. Born and raised in Scipio, I would not be included in the new map simply because my area didn't qualify to have the more urban area have eyes on my community. I feel it's absolutely essential that our urban community includes the larger portion of our states. All 4 corners of our states, 5 corners, are critical, and they have to have input from the community. Not just the rural areas take care of the rural and the urban take care of the urban. I think map A, B, C, out of that, B or C, is highly qualified to handle what is expected of you. I am so impressed at the work you've gone into, and it's unfortunate that you are called under suspicion because it is such an effort of the heart, and the heart of this state is what's at risk here. I would hope that you would recognize urban and rural go together. They do not separate when representing this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, next up, go ahead.
Madam Chair, my name is Jan Curran. I am 63 years old, resident of Salt Lake City. In the 43 years or so that I have been a registered voter here, I have not been represented by a Democrat in my district, and I think that that's unfair. I am the last person who represented me was Wayne Owens in the 70s, and I wasn't a registered voter at that time because I was a teenager. It's important that we have some fair representation from the state. Unfortunately, there was a misrepresentation given a few minutes ago by one of the testators, said that there was only 18% registered voters who were Democrat. That's not an accurate number. The more correct number would be at least 40%. And there are a lot of people like me who have switched parties in order to be heard, so that we can attend caucus meetings, so that we can be heard in the state. And so that 18% does not represent the actual number of Democrats who are here and who would like to be represented. The voter Prop 4 we voters are the ones that asked for that to be made. You all sitting here on this committee, you work for us. Please remember that. We want to be heard. We want to be represented. And I believe that there are a lot of people who consider right now that this situation is, I'm being taxed without representation. And some of you may remember what happened in the 1760s and 1770s when people were not being represented, but they were still being taxed. They were still having the onerous burdens without the chance to be heard and be represented properly. Please, I ask you to vote for the map F or the map that was presented by Senator Escamilla and Representative Owens. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up.
Shane Curtis, downtown, baby. My guy, all your hypocritical filigree alleging biases, real, bro? Well, the bias is suffocating the voice of 240,000 to 715,000 human beings, not counting moderate Republicans, depending on the strength of the schedule. Where'd the ball dude go? I guess dipped out that quick. Just can't keep immoral hands off even the voice of the people's ballot measure. Trying to eviscerate another one, I guess. Immorality. Losing Doug's map is the only just. Thanks.
Okay, next up. Delane England, representing Eagle Forum. The counties on cities are a reflection of our culture and a reflection of our population. Splitting cities and counties leads to an outcome, a very flawed process. The cities and counties are sacrosanct. And more important than the law is the higher law, the moral law. And we've just heard testimony right here admitting that there were people who were dishonest, who sign up to be Republicans, who are clearly Democrats. They show up at our caucus meetings. It's happened in my caucus numerous times, many times. That so there is a level of immorality in here. I would say Prop 4 was passed by a lack of moral code, because many people, many brought in from out of state, there was not a true education. People that voted for that did not understand what they were voting for. And our Constitution is the supreme law. We are required by our federal Constitution to not provide a democracy, but to provide a republic. And I think we're really endangering very dangerous ground here on acting as a democracy. The core, our districts must represent our people, the population. That I think it is gerrymandering when we split cities and split counties. The number is letter F for number 6 map is, in my opinion, the textbook case of a gerrymandering map. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up.
Thank you, committee members, for this opportunity to address you. My name is Becky Hepworth from South Jordan. I represent myself. I'm a registered Republican, a lifelong registered Republican who no longer feels represented at either the state or the federal level in Utah. First, I want to say that of the 5 maps that were presented Monday, I recommend map E because it's the most compact and leaves more of Salt Lake County intact while making drive times more reasonable than map D. Next, I want to talk about Brammer's bill that was presented in Monday's meeting. In my opinion, this bill is just a 2.0 version of SB 200 and is therefore nothing more than a Trojan horse presented as a gift, but is full of treachery that would give the legislature an excuse to pull another bait and switch and pass a gerrymandered map and put us right back to where we started from. I don't trust this legislature to follow the spirit of Prop 4 and suspect that all 5 maps are just a red herring that will be discarded and replaced with a gerrymandered concerned citizens map after the passing of Brammer's bill. I dare you to prove me wrong, but lived experience over the last 5 years has left me with no expectation of this body's sincerity. Lastly, I want to address Senator Sandal specifically. I attended the public hearing before the last gerrymandered map was voted in place, and my impression of you then was no different than it is now. Perhaps you aren't aware of the aura you give off.
Ma'am, can you, it's not appropriate to impugn the integrity of the legislature. It's in our decorum standards. So if you can just keep your comments to the actual maps, that'd be great.
I'm trying to give a perception of the aura that is given off. Okay. Someone asked a question. Representative Roberts asked a question about whether the legislation seems authoritarian. And I have to say that to many of us, it does. It's a resounding yes. And is that my second one?
That's actually your time, but I took a couple seconds of it, so go ahead and wrap up.
Okay. Anyway, I want to reiterate what someone said earlier, that you all are our servants. You're supposed to represent us, and we pay you from our taxpayer dollars. And to quote a scripture from my church, we have learned by sad experience that it is the nature and disposition of almost all men, as soon as they get a little authority, as they suppose, they will immediately begin to exercise unrighteous dominion. I urge this committee to serve the will of this committee and legislature to serve the will of the people with sincerity and humility. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
My name's Brooks Benson. I want to start by thanking all of you guys for the tough situation that you guys have been put in, and having to deal with this is not easy. The U.S. Constitution gives the power over elections and districting to the state legislatures. And the Utah State Constitution grants the power explicitly to the legislature. It's still there. We can read it. It's not changing. A single Utah state judge is overriding both U.S. and state constitutions, acting outside their purview. This judicial ruling has now created an additional path to amend the state constitution. This ruling created a conflict within the state constitution that did not previously exist. The role of the judiciary is to uphold the constitution, not to create conflict within it. The Utah Constitution clearly states how it is to be amended, and this process was not followed, but in fact was changed by judicial ruling. The state constitution has never been given the power to amend itself to the judicial branch unilaterally. Because of this confusion and limbo status, the judicial branch has put us in what because of this confusion and limbo status, the judicial branch has put us in, we call the Utah legislature to do what the judiciary did not, and uphold the Utah and U.S. Constitution to the best of their ability throughout this redistricting process. I'm originally born and raised in California, and so I understand the situation that some might feel living in Utah. It's one of the reasons I left California and moved to Utah, and so that I could be more represented and be around that situation. And I would hope that we would not cave to that and make both states represented differently in such ways. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, Chairwoman Perucci. Good to see
Caleb.
you again. My name is Caleb Tippett. I live here in Salt Lake County. I am a lifetime Utahn, and I'm here to comment on the proposals and propositions. One thing that I love about Utah is that we have the ability to change our government through propositions, and that's why I was so excited about Proposition 4. It's something that I could get behind. It was something that was driven by the people, for the people, to make these changes, and it was really disheartening to see that the legislature apparently dismissed those and adopted their own map. Throughout this whole process, it feels like my small government that I came to know and love became a big government overnight. Not listening to the will of the people. Instead of trying to change the Constitution to allow for a redistricting, you try to change the Constitution to take away the power of propositions. To be completely fair and honest, I am worried about big government and an authoritarian government. You pulled in a witness who has been documented in other situations. The Maryland State Court, talking about Dr. Trendy, said he has superficial and entitled to lightweight his data. One federal court called his data visualization misleading. These are all the things that, as a Utah voter, I've seen happening at a state level, and it makes me nervous about how you're running this government. Do the people really have the power to make changes to their government or not? Is the power solely with you, and we just hope that you guys listen? My goal is to encourage you and to ask, instead of trying to change the rules to make it easier for you guys to pass these things, to make these changes, please make an effort to listen to the voters and have our voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one clarification, if I might. You alluded to the fact that the legislature changed Proposition 4. I just need to be clear. That was a negotiation. Better Boundaries, who supported Proposition 4, actually came and agreed upon the language of Senate Bill 200. And that bill passed with bipartisan support. It had 0 nay votes in the Senate and only under 5, if I remember right, in the House. So I think we need to be clear that Proposition 4 was not just arbitrarily changed. The supporters of that proposition realized that there were some things that needed to be cleaned up, and they came to the legislature.
My apologies. Sorry, I'm really nervous. This is the first time I've ever heard public comment. I was mostly referencing Amendment D in 2024 when the legislature tried to change the power of propositions instead of trying to work with voters. I think that, to me, was really scary. Trying to reduce and to say, well, we can do whatever we want. Instead of changing to what you guys have voted for, we're just going to change the rules. And to me, as a voter, that was really terrifying. And I'm here mostly out of fear and hoping and asking to try to stop cutting corners so that we can feel trust again in our legislature.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, next up.
Yeah, I'm Nancy Saxton, and I'm here for myself and by myself. It is telling that this proposition was put on the ballot at a great deal of effort. It was passed in 2018. And if really the majority was so bound and determined to make voting fair and the maps fair, it wouldn't have taken till 2025. It's not lost on the public that you're using public money to fight the public's decision. It is deplorable, and shame on you. There are ways when people have estates to kind of divide all the things that are left over in the house and stuff. And there's this wonderful example that everybody goes and they put piles. Make piles, and every person puts something different on each of the piles because they don't know which pile they're going to get. And that's what the public is asking you to do. Be fair. I've been an elected official. I know what power you have. But because you have it, it doesn't mean that you should wield it or that you should do it. We ask you to be fair. We ask you to actually honor your position and not be lording over us. Not only have the people spoken to elect you, and I really am impressed that Utah has the ability to have propositions, and it is important to keep the public active. And for that reason, I ask you to be fair in honoring this decision that the public has made. And that is, I don't know why we have to keep military bases all together. Do people live on the military bases that we have? No, they live out in the public. We are the public. You represent
Your time
us.
is up. Thank you.
Please be fair. We've been long suffering enough
Thank
with all
you.
this gerrymandering.
Your time is up. Thank you. Next up. All right, go ahead.
Hello,
My name is Richard Harvey. I'm a resident of Salt Lake City. I'm not representing anyone but me today. And I am going to try to explain some math, possibly even calculus, while flustered. So please forgive me for any stumbling. Having read through Katz King Rosenblatt's work for around the 2018 to 2025 range and a little bit of earlier material, I have a pretty robust understanding as a person who does and teaches math to make my income of the mathematical structures that partisan symmetry and partisan bias summary statistics are based on. And I also have great sympathy with the legislature that they would love to have robust, straightforward, at least theoretically understood by someone, standards that they can apply to evaluate maps so they can do their constitutional obligation to draw maps correctly. So I am very sad to inform you that the, as we would say, beta of 0.5 equals 0 standard, which is approximately what we've been calling the partisan bias test for the past couple days, is simply not supported by the necessary assumptions to apply that test. Specifically because a 0.5 vote share, this is approximate language, again, sorry, vote share is very unlikely in Utah. And it cannot, fundamentally, the bias test cannot be extrapolated beyond empirically plausible vote distributions. So I'm sorry.
Thank you. Can I ask you, I really appreciate the way you've approached this and also your research. Which test would you prefer?
As Dr. Trendy explained, there are very few robust tests of partisan symmetry that can't be gained. It's incredibly difficult to come up with something that a very good computer can't beat. So the best solutions, importantly, there is an obligation in statute to evaluate partisan symmetry. And it's unfortunate that it is the opinion of Dr. King Katz Rosenblatt that the symmetry standard might be meaningless if it's being evaluated outside of a region that is intended that data supports can be calculated. I hope that made sense.
So you're saying you don't think there's a great test?
So it's very, very difficult to know what would happen in Utah that would cause there to be a 50-50 vote split. Political bias is not only examined there, but actually in the exact inversion of a 71% Democratic vote share. It's just incredibly difficult to imagine what voting patterns would look like under that circumstance. And it really, really pushes the models that we use to simulate that to their limits. Like 120% of people in this district voted for candidate B kind of pressure. And there are corrections for that could be added easily to Senator Brammer's bill. But there's an obligation to evaluate symmetry. Experts think that symmetry might not be a useful indicator of whether or not there is undue favor or disfavor to a party. So mostly it's necessary to measure partisan symmetry, and that should be considered. But also experts in partisan symmetry think that it's very, very hard and more tests help.
I will say I agree, or I appreciate your comments, and we are the only state in Prop 4 it says partisan symmetry. It calls it out, but other states haven't had that in propositions or initiatives that have been run. Yeah. So this is helpful. Thank you. I appreciate your thoughtful comments.
I have one interesting thing about that, if I might.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Utah is actually specifically discussed in a chain of correspondence about the 2019 paper, and about different possibilities to structure things that could work well. So I would encourage anyone to do the same research I did and hopefully find series of correspondence by DeFord, back and forth between DeFord, Katz, King, Rosenblatt.
Thank you.
So just, if I might, so in your opinion, there is no really good test to comply with what Proposition 4 asks us to do.
As I understand it, as a non-expert in this field, but a mathematically
but statistically,
experienced person,
yeah, you're a statistician.
Yeah. There is not a single test beyond a test that says, here are 10 tests that different groups prefer because it probably helps their team. And a majority of them say that this is pretty good. So you can construct, I'm sorry, I'm going to say ensemble again for the day, but a different ensemble. You can set up an ensemble of tests, and they will capture different things. But anytime we're taking millions of people and trying to describe them with a single number, it's going to be really hard. And unfortunately, politicians have figured out how to be more complicated than computer models because they're people, and people are complicated and tricky.
I wish we had the ability to legislate, and we could fix this in this case. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Next up, it looks like we're down to our final 2 in the room. Then we'll go online. So just getting online ready. We'll take 10 online. So we've got you lining up now. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tammy Flake. I'm in Utah County. I appreciate you guys being here and doing your process. And a big concern for me is time. I'm a mom of 5. I work jobs. And not only were you guys called in for this special circumstance for us to now dig deep into what I can't even wrap my head around. So I appreciate that you guys are opening it up to us and listening to our concerns. I listened to the first meeting on Monday, and you guys had expressed that the 5 maps that were proposed, if one of them is not passed by the whole legislature, wow, that's a long word, does this whole process start again to where you guys now can't meet the schedule of, okay, now we have to give the public so much time to like bring in this 6th map that we just saw today? Would that start the whole schedule and again prolong this whole process, not only for us but for you guys? So I don't know why bringing another one in would make sense, in my opinion. So if you've got to choose one to be able to comply, I prefer C, in my opinion, if you have to choose one at all. But to choose another one outside of 5 and start this whole process over again, our tax money is being used, our time to research. I just personally don't think it's worth it. And I do want to say, I believe that all of you guys have been very accessible throughout the whole year. Even though you're a part-time legislation, we can contact you, so we don't have to wait for a committee meeting to come and give our opinions. And I really appreciate all of you guys for being open to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, go ahead. Last one in the room.
Hi, my name is James Carter. I live in Salt Lake City. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. Any Stats 101 student has read that book and knows that there's no such thing as an unbiased statistical analysis presentation. Every presentation of statistical analyses will include the motivations, at least, of the presenter. And the motivations that I've heard today from both majority and minority caucus, from opposing experts, has been fairly along the lines of how far can we stretch our legal mandate to get what we want and stick it to the other guys. In service of the intent of Prop 4 for a fair representative map, I would urge the committee to reject all 6 maps proposed today and to instead look to maps drawn by, say, Stuart Hepworth here, fellow citizen, or by Daniel Friend, which have been drawn with fairness and with all of the requirements of Prop 4 in mind. Yes, it's true that the legislature holds the power constitutionally to decide on the map, and Prop 4 did not take that power away from the legislature. Our Constitution also says that the legislative power of our state lies in cooperation between the legislature and the people. So I would urge you to also check your motivations that Prop 4 is not a hindrance, but this is what the people want and therefore should be complied with as a measure to give the people what they want, which is just fairness and representation. I just want to be represented in my government. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just make one comment here. As was demonstrated, it's impossible to ascertain amongst all the maps that were drawn and submitted if any of them were drawn using political data in the time frame we have. That's almost an impossible task. So just you don't have to respond to that. I just want the public to know that because that is our mandate under Prop 4, no political consideration can be made in drawing a map, and we would have to go in and depose any or all of the map drawers to find out if political data was used, and we just don't have that time.
Can I respond in 3 words?
We're good. We actually don't allow for the back and forth, so unless
Thanks.
it's a question. Thank
Some
you.
others have had back and forth.
Thank you. I know. Thank you so much. It's if someone asks you a question.
You said almost.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to close public comment in person and go online. We've got, we're going to be taking 10 online. So go in this order. That raised their hand. Okay. Okay. Zach Chase. And if you're online, please make sure that your camera is on and that you state where you're from. Hey, go ahead, Zach Chase.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First off, thank you for letting me speak. I know it's been a long day. I can see feel some of the tension in the room and the eyes glazed, people ready for lunch. Some of you are ready for Cafe Rio in your head. Others scrolling emails, maybe even sneaking a bathroom break. I get it. But here's the truth. If we can't stay awake for democracy, maybe the maps aren't the only thing that needs redrawing. Let's zoom out. People don't live in data sets. They live in neighborhoods. They live in unincorporated farm towns with 2 gas pumps, in quiet cul-de-sacs where kids chalk hopscotch on the sidewalk, in high-rise apartments where young families are barely holding on. And when you split those communities up like nothing but grid squares, where you slice a town in half just to make math work, you're not just drawing a map, you're drawing distrust. That distrust echoes. It shows up in the farmer who doesn't know which rep to call, in the single mom who discovers her block got lumped into a city 2 counties over, in my own kids who, with 3 different moms, might actually end up represented by 3 different districts, which is funny, sure, but also tragic. Because if I can't figure out which map my family lives under, how can anyone else expect anyone else to? So let me ask questions that should be unarguable. Will you release the raw data sets, not just the polished PDFs with pretty colors, but the drafts, the messy versions, the hash codes, the working notes? Sunlight is the best disinfectant, so let us see how this sausage got made. Will you commit publicly to stop splitting up unincorporated towns like they're pieces of pie? Communities deserve wholeness, not surgical dissection. And will you make it so every Utahn, whether it's a kid with a phone, a grandma with a flip phone, or a rancher with spotty Wi-Fi, can look up and clearly see which district they belong to without a lawyer, without a lobbyist, without a migraine? But here's what's really at stake. And trust. Trust is harder to rebuild than any district line. Now, I'll be honest, I've got nightmares and I've got dreams. My nightmare, a Utah where rural towns dry up, where families get cut off from their own voice, where only data centers and corporations get to decide the future. A Utah where a map is just a tool for the powerful to pick their voters instead of the other way around. But what my dream is a Utah that Utah leads the nation. A Utah where urban and rural actually work together, where our maps don't split communities but stitch them together. A Utah that proves redistricting can be a tool for unity and not division. And look, I joke a lot, but that's how I survive these things. But underneath the jokes is a plea that this state matters to me. My kids matter. Your kids matter.
Time is up. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Aaron Bolin. Is he on? I have him on the list. Okay, I just am going off this list. Christian Weaver. Okay, next up is going to be Tal Adair. Okay, Christian, go ahead. If you can turn on your camera for us and your microphone. Okay, Christian, do we want to turn on your mic video one more time? If not, we're going to go to the next person. Okay, Tal Adair, go ahead.
Madam Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead, Tal.
Hey, thank you. As I've watched these proceedings and the work that you've all done over the last several weeks, I think it's important to say that you guys have done a great job in balancing, and in fact, fighting for our constitutional rights and also obeying what the judicial system was requiring of us. It's kind of a balancing act. You've done a really good job on defending both sides, and you should be commended for that, and also allowing us as citizens to be involved in that process. So thank you so much for all of your time and attention to this matter.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Jacob Hansey. All right, Jacob, go ahead and unmute and turn on your camera and you're set to go. All right, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hey, thanks for letting me talk. Jacob from Dayton, Utah. Just wanted to point out, during the first hearing, we heard some representatives say they were here under distress. This time, hearing a lot of blaming on the courts, be it for the specifics or the reason why you're here or all the hurdles that you've had to jump through. Well, the blame lies with you guys for failing to listen to the will of people with Prop 4 in the first place. So I couldn't help but think of the meme with the kid riding the bike and sticking his stick in the front wheel and then blaming something else. It's kind of disappointing that it's done this. And, I don't have much faith that you'll take anything that anyone here today says into consideration. Unless it, conforms to your own bias. And I also want to point out that it wasn't, as some other commenters had said, it wasn't a judge that made this decision. It was the people. It was 30% of the voters that made this, so maybe not the wonderful 50% that you'd want to see, but the people who actually voted. It wasn't the judge. And I won't take up any more of your time.
Thank you. All right, next up, we'll have Blake Rumrell. All right, Blake, go ahead.
Sorry, had to give permissions. I'm from Centerville, Utah, born and raised there, and I'm currently in Provo at BYU, getting a graduate degree. And my comments are that I have seen, looking at the feedback for the maps, that there are other maps like Stuart Hepworth and others have suggested that, at least based on their claims, fit the priorities of Proposition 4 better than some of these maps that you guys are giving more scrutiny to. And so I hope you give those maps that are claiming to fit the goals better equal consideration, as they are saying that they fit the priorities of the proposition and what you should be aiming for. And I want to also speak against what I've heard both you as a committee and others who've given comment have said of what I see as false premise of needing districts to mix both urban and rural. Utah should value its rural resources and rural communities, but also the districts should represent the people with similar goals and values. We don't need to dilute the rural votes and urban's votes by mixing when we can have them be compact districts that fit the goals of the districts under Proposition 4 and the U.S. Constitution laws. And that is not something that you are directed to do under Proposition 4, is to consider that goal. It's not something that is meant to and underlies the bias that we all have. We all have, as someone else said, bias in these maps that are being proposed, whether that's for one side or the other, for rural's interest or urban interest. And I don't think mixing that shows a bias for one side. And I'm disappointed in the committee's dedication to that bias goal.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Kathy Campbell.
Hi, I'm Kathy Campbell. I'm a retired attorney. I moved to Utah back in '92. I moved straight to Park City, and I had a Democratic rep. The only one, of course, in the state of Utah. And that was back when the Democrats here were really Republicans, prior to MAGA, prior to Donald Trump. I'm now in Salt Lake, so I have been here for 33 years. Most of that time I have not been represented. And I'm not going to comment specifically on any map. I'm going to say that the affiliations in this state, there are about 47% of the people in the state who do not affiliate with the Republican Party. I'm not going to guess how they vote, but they are not Republican affiliates. If this committee, if this does not turn out, I'm going to make it simple math. We should have at least one Democratic seat, and there should be a purple seat. And I'm tired of the Republicans constantly jamming their policies down our throats. This state is growing. You guys love the growth and the tax dollars, but you don't want to hear what people who are moving into the state have to say. They don't have the same morals and values as most of you have. I also want to agree with the college student that urban issues are completely different from rural issues. I don't see any need for those two groups to be in a district. Urban voters have different values. They have different issues than the rural voters. And once again, if this does not turn out to have at least one Democratic seat and possibly a purple seat, you've just gerrymandered again. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Chris Kimball. Is she on? Oh, okay. If she's not on. Caroline Glee. All right, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name's Caroline Gleich. I live in unincorporated Summit County, and all across the country, redistricting is turning into a bitter fight that's dividing communities and weakening trust in democracy. But right now, Utah has the chance to do something different, to show real leadership. When Utah voters passed Prop 4 in 2018, we said clearly that we want fairness, transparency, and accountability in how our maps are drawn. The courts have upheld that choice. Now it's time for the legislature, for you all, to follow through. And if Utah gets this right, we can show the nation how to rise above partisanship and create maps that put people before politics. And we can prove that voters, not politicians, should decide who represents us. So this is really a chance for Utah to lead the country, to make Prop 4 a model for democracy nationwide, and to live up to the best of the Utah way. So I urge you to honor the will of the people and deliver maps that keep our communities whole and our voices represented. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, Jenny Earl.
Can you see me?
Not quite yet. There you go. You're good.
Just a couple of things. Thank you twice, if I can say that, to the legislature for the hard work previously and for the hard work now. I know how much time and effort goes in. This is not the only when you have these large districts for congressional, you also previously take into consideration all the other entities that are impacted. And I represent Northern Utah on the state school board. And so I'm aware of the impact of changing boundaries and changing areas. I just want to speak to two things. One, it is important that each of these congressional representatives have a piece of school land trust lands within their area, because I think they need to know the importance of the funding as well as the impact that it has on the state of Utah and how those lands in Utah are impacted. The other thing I want to speak to is the distance of representation. And I have a large area I represent. It takes me hours to get from one side to the other and to get to meetings. It takes a lot of family time. It takes a lot of just a lot of effort to do that. When you have excessively large areas, it's hard not only on the representative, but on the constituents themselves. And so I would ask that you keep this in mind as you're looking at these different maps. Thank you for your fair process, and I appreciate you giving me a few minutes.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, next up we have Angie Lucas. All right, go ahead, Angie.
Hello. I just wanted to say I'm from Bluffdale, Utah, Angie Lucas. I also reject the premise that all 4 districts have to mix rural and urban. That feels like a device to make sure that rural votes outnumber urban votes for partisan reasons. And I don't feel like I'm being represented well. And speaking to some of the comments that were made, I feel like I have to be registered as a Republican in order to feel any representation at all, even though the Republican Party left me behind for the last 10 years, despite being a lifelong Republican before that. So I just want to speak to the attorney from Summit County. I agree with her that if this is a fair map, it should result in at least 1 Democratic seat, because 47+% of Utahns have been left behind by the Republican Party of Donald Trump. And the rural-urban split makes me feel outnumbered, makes me feel like I don't have a voice. And I just want to make sure that everyone can look into their heart and ask, are you there to bake in an advantage for your party? Or is it your goal to represent the population fairly? That's what we wanted with Prop 4. And it feels like a lot of devices to get around the principle that Prop 4 was enacted to follow. And I also want to say that some of the comments from some of the people who fear democracy, I find them chilling, and who claim that Prop 4 was immoral. There's a lot of voices, and I've seen people in the audience nodding along. The blue polo man and the woman in the star scarf and the gentleman with the sunglasses, I can see the solidarity.
Members of the public, let's just continue on the comments, though.
Just saying that I can see those who nodding along, and that there's more who agree with this than you might be hearing, as like the people that I'm connected with in my community. There's a lot of us alarmed by the what seem to be antics of the legislature, and I appreciate what you're doing now to try to address that.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Miriam Bastian. That'll be our last online comment. All right, Miriam, go ahead.
Hi there, Miriam Bastian from South Jordan, Utah, lifelong Utahn. I second a lot of these concerns that urban does not need to be grouped with rural. When I think about my rural family and friends, our goals are the things that are important to us are very, very different. I also have not felt represented. Representative Ferrucci and Senator Fillmore, I do appreciate that when I reach out to you guys, you get back to me. What I don't appreciate is that I feel my voice is ignored and has been. I am a Democrat-leaning registered Republican, and to call that immoral is also ironic when that feels like the only way we can have a voice. I just echo what everyone else has said. Please be fair. when looking at these maps. We just want to be represented. You are here to represent us, and we are asking you to be fair when considering these maps. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we will close public comment. We've had a good, robust discussion today with over 25 members of the public jumping on. And also, you are welcome to comment online as well and send us emails on the committee, and we'll go over some of those items. I just want to, there are a couple of thoughts I've had while I've been listening to public comment that I just want to make sure we set the table here on. There was a reference made in the Revolutionary War to the colonists and not having representation. Even if you don't identify with the party of the congressperson who represents you, they still represent you. Our colonists legitimately did not have anyone in parliament representing them. And there are countries around this world like North Korea, Afghanistan, Sudan, who have dictatorship rule where people legitimately do not have representation. And we are very blessed in the United States of America that we do have representatives. So regardless of whether or not they agree with you, you should still reach out to them, and you are still being represented. I'll also point out that we all represent different parts of the state on this committee. I represent Harriman and Riverton, which is going to look very different than, say, where Representative Brooks represents. And I'd encourage you to reach out to your representative who is representing you in the legislature. So appreciate people being willing to come in today and give public comment. Really appreciate the committee. This meeting was scheduled to go till 1 o'clock, but there are a couple of housekeeping items I need to go over really quick. Again, we're going to pull up the map, or we were going to, if we're able to, the redistricting website. Do you mind doing that? Yeah, where you can see the data. So all data that was discussed today is public and online, and you can go back and review that. It just takes some time to get things uploaded. So that's now online. By no later than tomorrow, everything from today will be uploaded, if not already. And this is just a reminder that the legislature cannot adopt a map that is not publicly available for comment starting tomorrow, September 25th. So when we meet back in a special session, it'll be one of these maps that were publicly available to meet the 10-day window that was outlined by Judge Gibson in her timeline and order. So just wanted to make sure we had those housekeeping items met. Co-Chair Sandel, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize what was just said, because there has been some confusion about whether we're ordered to recommend a map today or not. Judge Gibson's order that the party stipulated to says that the 10-day requirement in Prop 4 applies. Okay, subsection 20A-19A-204, subsection 4 prohibits the legislature from adopting a map that hasn't been public for 10 days in a way that lets the public comment. It does not require the legislature to pick a map without convening 10 days before it votes on the map. The legislature is considering many options, and we want to gather as much public comment as possible on all of them. So we're soliciting feedback on multiple maps. Remember, for following Prop 4, we'd have to limit all initial public info gathering steps out around the state in state hearings. Now we're trying to do all of that in a really tight timeline. Public comment is meaningless if we make a decision today before we take the rest of that public comment. So as such, to reinforce, the maps that you see online will all be available for public comment for those 10 days, as long as they're submitted by the end of the day on the 25th. Mm-hmm. On the end of the day on the 25th or the 24th. Let me make sure. On the 25th. So any map that is publicly available on the redistricting website can be commented on, and the legislature can consider the map and the comments. Just want to make sure that we're clear. Yeah, after the 25th, because at that point any map would not be able to be considered in the legislative session. After the 25th, maps will not be vetted or considered. Thank you.
All right. With that, I'll take one final motion. All right. That motion to adjourn it by Representative Gracious is not debatable. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.